why are we called Negroes? Why are we deaf, dumb, and blind? Why is everybody making progress, yet we seem to be lagging so far behind? Why are we mistreated? Why are we in this condition, stripped of our name, our language, our culture, our God, and our religion? Here in America, all of our religious training has been gotten by the preacher. He has told us of a heaven way up in the sky that we can't enjoy now, but rather after we die. But all of the years that we're living, for us there's nothing but hell, pain, torture, and misgiving. Yet the Bible speaks of a heaven filled with material luxury, which the white man and the preacher has right here, so we see. So my friend, take it for what it's worth. Your heaven and your hell is right here on this earth. So let's check back into history, which rewards all research and tells us plainly that before the white man gained entry to the East, he was living in the caves of Europe, a ravenous beast, eating juniper roots and eating flesh raw, till God sent Moses to civilize him and teach him the law. Then, following Marco Polo, an explorer, he gained entry into Asia and Africa. From China, he took silk and gunpowder. From India, he took jute, manganese, and rubber. He raped Africa of her diamonds and her gold. From the Mideast, he took barrels of oil untold, raping, robbing, and murdering everything in his path. The whole black world has tasted of the white man's wrath. So, my friend, it's not hard to tell. A white man's heaven is a black man's hell. America, we were living in the East. By the Nile River, we were living in luxury, enjoying freedom, justice, and equality. We wore silken robes and slippers of gold. We were the wealthiest and the wisest people, I'm told. Now we are the poorest of the poor. Nobody wants us at their door. So, my friend, it's easy to tell. White man heaven is black man hell. When the white man came to America, he told the Indian, I am your white brother. He said, red man, I'll treat you the best. Yet and still he pushed the Indian further west with his white woman and fire water. Tricks and lies, he stole America. The original owner of this nation is cooped up on a reservation. So, my friend, it's easy to tell. White man heaven, black man hell. He needed someone to work the land. His back was too weak. He needed you, black man, so he commissioned Sir John Hawkins to commit the world's most grievous sin, to take a man who's born to be free and bring him down to slavery to sell a man as merchandise. On his body put a price. Oh, my friend, it's easy to tell. White man heaven is a black man hell.
Brother Zamal needs no introduction. He needs no introduction at all. Your reputation supersedes you, and we know what to expect, but then again, we don't, because you always come with something from a different angle that surprises us. Like when you look at the great fighters down to the ages, you know, it's just a spectacle to see because you know those magical moments would come. Every Muhammad Ali fight that you would see when he was close to his prime, Mike Tyson fights that you would see, even Floyd Mayweather, as we begin to appreciate him now. You got away with words, but behind the words is substance and long hours of study, and we respect you for that, brother. So I'm not going to say anything more. All I'm going to say is that the title of this show is What Black Folks Need to Know About Islam. Ladies and gentlemen, Brother Zamal Tamaray. My brother.
I'm here.
I gave a little introduction, but I didn't think you heard it because I had one of the mute buttons on, so I kind of threw you in the water.
Yeah,
you know it's glowing
like
words.
A fish out of water, man. I'm a fish out of water.
You're never a fish out of water, but you're always ready.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a fish, you could swim. If you were a bird, you could, you could do everything, man. I'm convinced.
I'll improvise this time. That's what I'll do.
Just flow, brother.
Yeah. That's what I'll do. So the music's played and everything's good.
Oh yes. Oh,
I'm live.
Oh yes, you are.
Oh, okay.
You're live all the time, brother.
Let's do it. Shout out to the family.
Yes.
Global Black family. Diaspora, the Black diaspora. Just wanted to remember that last video I did on legal. What did I call that? Corporate tricks and legal fictions.
Yes.
Legal tricks and corporate fictions.
Corporate fictions. Yes.
That was part one, and I saw from the response that everybody had that it was like really impactful information. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people kind of needed to, I felt that I needed to step back and let people just let that marinate in people's minds and let them review those concepts and those ideas that I put forth, because it's not something that can be digested in one sitting.
That's right.
For the most part.
That's right.
If someone's already known about this information or has heard about it or has some type of foundational knowledge about it, then that could be, they're already acclimated. But for people that have never heard this before, that's the reason I did that video. And I know the information it's in the public domain. So it's not new information, but it's new to people that have never heard it if that's the first time they've heard it, or if they've never heard it explained in the manner in which I explained it, because I try to go into, great detail when I explain things. Then I just wanted to, just to make sure that people have a good grasp of what I'm talking about. So I use examples and whatnot, analogies.
Right.
And but I will revisit that topic. I'm not done with that topic because the part that I started was just to give them, I started with definitions, and then I was getting into the part where I would give them examples of how they have been defrauded, and examples of actual names and actual definitions of different types of criminality that has been transpiring in this type of maritime system, maritime admiralty law. So I'll do that next time. And then, of course, I'll give a history in terms of how we got to where we, to this point. And then I'll finish it up with the remedy, what can be done about this? Because the remedy is here. It's always been here. People are just not aware of it. So that being said, and then there was a couple of people that had questions. One guy had a question about colloidal silver. And if he goes back to my video on survival mode, that video had all the information that he needs about the colloidal silver and how to make his own colloidal silver type device if he wants to do that for purifying things and eliminating disease and whatnot. So, and then another brother had a question about, I think he asked, what is the purpose of the bailouts? You know how when these corporate, these corporate juggernauts get bailed out and they receive all these funds from the government, which is really funds from us. Because when you say it's from the government, it's really a euphemistic way of saying that you're really getting it from the people. So basically, it's just a mass looting operation, because I've defined capitalism, I think, in that Legal Tricks and Corporate Fictions and in other prior videos. I define capitalism in many different ways. Of course, capitalism would be the inverse of communism. And basically, they're really the same thing. So you could define it that way. You could also define it as a form of human sacrifice, which I defined before. And then, of course, you can also define capitalism as a mass looting operation, because that's exactly what it is. So the thing that best exemplifies that is what they call those bailouts, because when they have a bailout, it's analogous to, say, a cow. A cow is full of milk, and the cow has those things underneath, the equivalent of a female's breast, but their things are called udders, and they have those 4 things called teats, or 2 teats, and the teats are like the nipples. And so what's happening is America is analogous to this cow, and this cow is full of milk, and they're milking it for all that it's worth. That's what's going on with the bailout. So bailout is a discriminatory economic activity, because they're taking largesse from the people, and they're taking those spoils from the people and they're giving it to the rich, which is the opposite of what Robin Hood would do. So they're doing the opposite, which is basically highway robbery, which is that's basically what it is. So it's like, another way you could describe it is if you have a group of creditors that need to be paid, some of those creditors would be in senior position. Some of them would be in junior position, like a mortgage. A mortgage could have a first mortgage and a second mortgage. If you have a first mortgage, that mortgage has to be paid off first, so that's in senior position. The second mortgage is in junior position. So that house is sold, that second mortgage is paid off last, and it's of course the first mortgage is paid off first. So that's basically what it is. It's a discriminatory economic type of activity, and they're milking this system for everything it's worth. And of course, that's the way it's supposed to be based on the way it was set up, because you know that phrase in the Constitution, they say to ourselves and our posterity. They're not talking about you, black people. They're talking about white people, to themselves, So the Constitution was never written for us anyway. And of course, you're not a citizen in the terms that you think. So that's my answer to that question. That's my response to those questions. So I hope that maybe they'll hear this message. And at some point when I get some time, I'll just create an email and just respond to them directly. I've just been so busy with things, So I guess, and I've been hearing a lot of people talk about Islam, people that I run across on a regular basis, and they think that it's something novel, and they think things about it that it's not. And they just, sometimes people tend to just go with what they feel and not with the research. I've done a lot of research on Islam and other religions, but it's kind of akin to what I call getting caught up in the minutia. Because when you fall, or you get into let's say you get into a relationship with a female, and you like all the little things about her, but you don't really know anything about her. You don't know where she's from. You don't know anything about her parents. You don't know anything about her background, but she looks good. She has this size breast. Her butt looks like this. She walks like that. Right. She's really pretty, but that's superficial stuff. So when I say you get caught up in the minutia, if you get caught up in the minutia, that means you get caught up in, I refer to that as getting caught up in the actual dogma. You become a slave to another man's dogma, because you're not doing the other half of your due diligence. And the other half of the due diligence is to find out exactly what the origin of this doctrine or this ideology is. Where did it come from? How did it come to be? Nobody asks those questions. So you have to be a scientist nowadays, because one of the dangers with religion is that it has stolen people's imagination. and it has also stolen their critical thinking abilities.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't have critical thinking skills, and they certainly don't teach that in the educational system or the miseducational system. So, you know, I'm not done, not by any means assailing or savaging the bankrupt religion of Christianity. In fact, I plan to attack Christianity in so many unorthodox ways that it would probably be akin to a boxer that's on the ropes. Let's say a champion boxer, he's on the ropes. I got him on the ropes. And while he's on the ropes protecting his face, he's receiving a withering volley of combination punches, uppercuts, and overhand blows from me, you know. But, you know, this is the phenomenon, or this is the phenomenon you call Islam. When you get to Islam, Islam is very, very special. Islam is very, very unique. And I know the funny thing about people that are involved in Islam is that the ones that I know, they don't even know about the history. And the ones that do know about the history, they know a doctored history. Just like the Christians, they have a history of Christianity. But of course, it came through the Roman Catholic Church, or it filtered down through the Roman Catholic Church. And it's just a slanted version of history, because when you get your information, they think they're doing their research, but you don't get information from the same party that's propagating the doctrine. You have to get third-party information to really know what the heck is going on. Of course, you take a deep dive in the information, you immerse yourself in the doctrine, but you're not really getting a full spectrum information or full spectrum knowledge. So one thing, people always like to look at the things that make religions different, but nobody, very, very few individuals look at what makes what makes these religions, what type of common ground these religions have, or what type of commonalities they have one with the other. You notice that?
It's
they
almost,
always, you notice that?
Yeah, definitely.
You know why they do that?
Tell me.
Divide and conquer. But I sat down one day and I thought about, once I learned about these religions, I thought about all of the ways that they were common, all of the commonalities that they had. And one of the first things I thought about was, okay, Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, Islam. The Abrahamic religions are common. Well, let's talk about how they're different. Well, if you're a Muslim and you're in Islam, you pray 5 times a day. If you're a Muslim in Islam, you don't eat pork. If you're just like, you know, the Judaic faith, right. If you're a Christian, you eat whatever you want. Although in the Old Testament, there's a prohibition against eating pork. But in the New Testament, Paul says that you can basically eat whatever you want. So the other difference is that the women, they adorn themselves in Islam. They cover their entire bodies. And of course, it depends on which denomination of Islam, because there's different denominations. In Islam, they can cover themselves completely. In some cultures, they have to cover their entire body and not even show one inch of their skin or 1 inch of flesh. Meanwhile, the men can walk around, pretty much do whatever they want. So that's another difference. What's another difference? Another difference is they have a festival, or they have this thing they called Ramadan. In Ramadan, I've had people that I've known that have been Islamic. A friend of mine, he's from Morocco, and very interesting guy. He had a big afro, right? But he looked like a white boy in the face. Very, very strange. And he always talked about how he didn't like his hair. And he was one of our brothers that just forgot who he was, and his genes and his genetics got mixed up in the many different invasions that occurred in those lands. So so Ramadan is another thing. Ramadan if you've ever been to Ramadan before, the people that cook the food is excellent. I'll give them that. The food is really, really good. So that's another difference. Of course, it's kind of similar to Christianity, but there are differences. And then, of course, in Islam, you have this thing they call Hajj, where you go and make your pilgrimage, and you're supposed to do that once a year, or once in your lifetime at least. And then, of course, they have fasting during the month of Ramadan. You know, so there's certain things that they have that they don't have in the Judaic faith. And the same holds true with Christianity. So let's look at the things that make them that give them common ground. The commonalities between those different, let's just concentrate on the Abrahamic religions. Abrahamic religions, one of the things that makes them, one of the commonalities that they have is that all of them were spread by war. So if you ever study the background of these religions, you'll see that all of them were spread from the point of the sword, period. It doesn't matter if it's Christianity, Judaism, Islam, all of them were spread in the exact same way. The main thing about the three of them is that all of them are Abrahamic doctrines. You know, they have a commonality of prophets. They have the same patriarch is common to Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. So they have a commonality of prophets, a commonality of teachings. And then, of course, they have, all of them feature a male god, a patriarchal or a male god, not a female, but a male god. And then, of course, all of them are geospecific, which means they come from the same geographical region, like Mesopotamia is the origin of all three of those different, really the same religion. And you'll see. All of them also claim to have a monopoly on the truth. You ever notice that? You ask a question about their religion, but they all have a monopoly on the truth. Everybody is correct. Everybody is right. Okay. So that's a couple things. And then, of course, they are, and intolerance is based on degree too. With the Muslim faith, that they're more intolerant than the Christians, but there's a reason for that. But they also have another thing that makes them, that gives them a commonality or common ground is that they are all an eclectic mix or mixture of other religions. Mm-hmm. A lot of people don't know that. They are an eclectic mix or mixture of other religions. So when I say eclectic, I mean an eclectic is something that deals with things that come from different sources. Like if you have milk, the milk is what they call homogenized, right? The ingredients in the milk have been blended and everything is similar. But then you have the concept of heterogeneity, like heterosexual. That means you like opposites or the different sex, as opposed to homo. Homo, you like the same sex. So, but with with Islam, they have this eclectic mixture of other religions. So basically, it's a composite. It's a composite of other religions. So another thing that I noticed is that all of these faiths are similar in that they all invoke fear in their adherents. You know that. You see, if you've ever looked into Islam or read some of the words in Islam or the passages in the book, you'll see it's all about fear and fearing Allah or fearing this Judaic God or fearing Yahweh or fearing, it's very interesting. Another thing I saw was that each faith had their own, pretty much their own version of the Inquisition or some type of religious persecution. Everybody knows about the Inquisitions of the Catholic Church, where they were going around burning quote unquote witches at the stake, right? And I talked about that in my series when She-Rose ruled the world. I think I talked about that in that one of those.
Yeah, you covered it.
Did I cover that? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and great. And I think I covered that in some detail when I did when She-Rose ruled the world. That was basically about how women were on the planet first, and how classic. They were the first deities, and they were the ones who were ruling the planet. Mm-hmm. Which will happen again, and it's bound to happen again. That's in the works right now. Most people don't know that. But anyway, these religions, they all invoke fear in their adherents. So, I said that already. But then back to the how they have their own forms of persecutions. The Roman Catholic Church, they've had their inquisitions, and the Islamic faith, they have their version of inquisitions too, or religious, what I would call religious persecutions. What's another thing that gives them commonality? All of them are monotheistic. They profess to be people that follow the belief in one God. So they believe in one God, right? Mm-hmm. If they're copied from older religions, none of them are divinely inspired. It kind of ties into the fact that they're all a composite or a mixture of other religions. It's just like a hodgepodge. Another thing I noticed about these religions is that all of them are they are totalitarian in ideology. They all impose a thought dictatorship, because you can't question the pastor in Christianity. You don't question the rabbi, and you certainly can't question the Muslim imam.
That's right. That's a no-no.
That you can't do it. You might get physically hurt. Another thing I noticed is that all of them are replete with pagan practices. There's many different pagan practices that have crept into Christianity, and there are many pagan practices that are associated with Islam. I know people that are in Islam may not want to hear that, but that happens to be true, and I'll tell you about that if I have time tonight. So when I said that they're all, you know how the Christians, when they have their persecutions, the Catholic Church, they were calling people heretics.
Yeah.
A heretic is basically a person that, if you look up the word heretic, it's a person that chooses. So because you choose not to be associated with the Roman Catholic Church, that makes you a heretic, and then you're guilty of the crime of heresy. And in the Catholic Church, when that happens, they excommunicate you, right?
That's so crazy.
And the Jehovah's Witnesses, what's that?
Yeah, they excommunicate you in the Jehovah's Witnesses too.
Exactly. They disfellowship you. That's what they call it.
They can't talk to you. You can't talk to them. It's crazy.
But what do they do in the Muslim faith?
Same thing.
They physically hurt you, they maim you, they cripple you, or they try to kill you, or they do kill you.
Blood in, blood out. Doesn't seem like a gang. For real.
Yeah, I know people that have been involved in Islam, and when they've gotten out of Islam, I knew of a guy, one case in particular, he got out of Islam, and his cousins were sent by his mother to interrogate him to find out whether he was going to, come back into the fold. And he was like, nope, I'm not coming back. And he was in a shopping mall. And so they took him, they picked him up, and they threw him one level down onto the lower level in the shopping mall. And they crippled him, and they put him in. I saw him on YouTube. He was in a hospital. He was really banged up. And that's what they do to people in Islam. And and some people, they even get murdered. You leave Islam, you're done. So they are rife with pagan practices. They are, totalitarian in ideology. They have missionaries, just like you have the Christian missionaries that go to different lands. You have these Muslim missionaries. They don't call themselves missionaries, but they might be called proselytes or proselytizers. So in a sense, all of them are expansionist. The only difference would be Judaism. Judaism is not really technically expansionist. They don't really seek to, because they don't mix their blood for the most part. Some of them, there's exceptions to every rule, but for the most part, Judaism is not something where they're like, okay, we want to welcome, these additional outside non-ethnics into our group. But Christianity certainly is, and Islam is too, because Islam wants to conquer the entire world. So they all have missionaries in that sense. And then another thing I noticed, and I think I probably already mentioned, that they impose a penalty for leaving, or for non. They call them non-believers. They don't call them heretics in Islam. They call them non-believers, or they call you an infidel, which is just as bad, or they call you a kafir. A kafir is an infidel or a non-believer. And the other thing that's very, very interesting about the three denominations is that they all have different expressions or different denominations, like Judaism. In Judaism, you have, what do they call it? Orthodox Judaism. You have Reform Judaism. You have Jews for Jesus, and many, many other denominations. And then, of course, in Christianity, what do you have? The Episcopalian faith, the Methodist faith, the Lutheran faith, the Mormon faith, the Church of God in Christ. You have the Baptists, you have the Adventists, the Quakers, the Mormons. So those other guys, they call them those people that the Amish. All these different branches of Christianity, and what does that all lead to? Confusion. So they all have many different denominations, many different expressions. And then I noticed another thing about these three different religions. Well, these three really, they're really the same. They all marginalize women, all of them. Every single one of these Abrahamic religions, every single one of these Abrahamic faiths, they demonize and marginalize women. And then another thing that's really interesting for people that are thinking about joining Islam, you have to think about the fact that they all endorse the reprehensible practice of slavery. All of them. Go back through your Christian verses and read what it says about slavery. Go back to your Judaic verses and see what they say about slavery. And then go to your Muslim Bible or your Muslim Quran or Quran, however you want to pronounce it, and see what they say about slavery. Okay? What else is common? Oh, yeah. They all, I mentioned that they're all a set of man-made books, which really ties into the fact that they're a composite of other religions, so they're man-made. And then, of course, each one of them feature a violent, vindictive, and jealous deity. In each case, in whichever religion you want to describe, they all feature a deity that's vindictive, jealous, and extremely violent. And that's not even the full list. I mean, I kept making a list and I wrote this list and I'm like, wow. And there's another thing that gives them personality too. Oh yeah. They all have an obsession with rituals and rites. They have an obsession with various rituals and rites. For Christians, you have Easter, you have Christmas. Don't know what you're celebrating, but they're, and I did explain that in a video that I did, sun worship, the video that I did some weeks ago. And I think I did that in some detail. And then another thing that they all have in common, guess what that is?
What's that?
How many did I mention so far?
Wow, about 4 or 5.
I mean, how many things did I list that were, that makes them all have some type of common ground?
About 4 or 5.
That's a long list,
yeah,
I think.
Yeah, of course. And I also noticed that when you break things down factually, they get crazy on you and start spitting back like the same things. That it's not, you can't talk with them.
Yeah.
They just throw things at you without knowing what it is. When you break it down, they just stick their head in the sand and just cover up and just say, just say these little sayings, these little, you know what I mean? And it's like, okay, break it down. Where did it come from? Exactly. That's
the fallback. That's what I call the fallback.
Yeah, when you study.
Because
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, no, you could. Well, when you buy into a certain doctrine or a certain belief system, because you bought into that system, you have to defend that system, because for all intents and purposes, from your mind at least, or from your vantage point, that belief system is you. So if somebody attacks that belief system, they're attacking you because, of course, you have taken ownership of that false doctrine, and you basically live in what I call, you live in another man's box. Somebody is taking your brain and put it into a box. That's the way I describe it. But so there's many different ways that they are very, very connected one to the other, and like I mentioned, many different denominations, all these different Christian denominations, but of course the Muslims have the same thing. You have splinter groups in Islam. You have Sunni, you have Wahhabi, you have Shiite, you have Ahmadiyya, and then many splinter groups underneath that. So the other thing that is very, very interesting that links all of these Abrahamic faiths together, which is really one faith when you think about it, it's one faith. They all include blood rituals and animal sacrifice. Blood rituals and animal sacrifice. I won't go into depth on that at this point, but there's a lot to be said about that. Why they do it? What is the purpose for these animal sacrifices and these blood rituals? There's a very, very good reason for that. But I'll talk about that at some other point. So if someone hears these words from me, they would probably automatically think Nation of Islam. That would be the first thing that will come to their mind, or the Moorish Science Temple, So does this mean that the Nation of Islam is bad? The Nation of Islam as I observe and as I've learned about the Nation of Islam is a Black revolution type of theology. The Nation of Islam is different from what these racist Arabs have created, or what their this is what our ancestors have basically created. And even though they have worked or striven so hard, and I'm talking about the caveman, they've worked so hard to undermine and to infiltrate organizations like the Nation of Islam and any other Black organization for that matter, violent or nonviolent, as they would refer to the Nation. The Nation is, I've never seen them to engage in any type of violence, but what I can say about the Nation of Islam is that they have definitely had a positive impact on many people's lives. I've seen them take drug users, crackheads, men and women, and completely turn their lives around. I've seen them reduce crime in Black neighborhoods. So even though the government has had infiltration as a part of their agenda for all Black organizations, not just the Nation of Islam, I recognize the Nation of Islam as a Black revolution type of theology, different from Sunni Islam, different from Wahhabi Islam, different from Ahmadiyya Islam, different from any of those orthodox types of Islamic organizations created by racist Arabs, which are blood related to Europeans anyway. And I'll talk about their lineage in a little bit. But basically, other thing I can say about the Nation of Islam is that the Arabs, or Elijah, mentioned that the Bible and the Quran would give way to a new book. And he mentioned that a new teacher is already here. He mentioned that he didn't know who this man was, but he described who he was. And he said, I'm getting a vision of him. And, he's going to be releasing, a ton of books and a ton of pamphlets. And that's what he said. He was talking about Dr. Malachi Ziyor. That's who he was talking about. And he's basically taken the work and expanded on the teachings and given us actual facts about exactly what Elijah Muhammad was referring to, what he was talking about, because everything that Elijah Muhammad taught was not meant for him to actually break down. And in many of the previous videos that I've done my best to break down just a portion of that information, because like I said, the information is so vast that I can't even, and it keeps pouring out in such a measure that it's hard to keep up. It's just a lot of information. But in terms of how the Nation of Islam even came about, how the Moorish Science Temple came about, I mean, if I'm telling you guys facts, you guys need to know all this. So I'm just going to tell you the facts. There's an organization called the Ancient Arab Order Nobles of the Mystic Shrine, also called the Shriners, also known as the Turkish Shriners. The Turkish Shriners got together with another group. Of course, this Ancient Arab Order Nobles of the Mystic Shrine, there's a secret society. They merged, or they worked in concert with another group called the Islamic Branch of the Knights of Columbus, which is a secret order, a secret European order. And it was basically the Islamic Branch of the Knights of Columbus created the Moorish Science Temple. And the Ancient Arabic Order Nobles of the Mystic Shrine, they created the Nation of Islam. And the European did that because they basically wanted to take Black people for another spiritual ride. They wanted to take us away from true, our true spirituality. And it really backfired on them because, like I said, the Nation of Islam has done a great work. And even though they tried to throw a monkey wrench into the organization, look at what they have produced. Look at Malcolm X. Look at Brother Khalid Muhammad. Look at some of the teachings of even Minister Farrakhan. But like I said, I'm not a Muslim. I have evolved beyond religion. I have transcended religion. But that branch of the Knights of Columbus, they call them Alhambra, Hambra. They have the green flag with the red star, created by pale Arabs of Arabia of the Saud family. And then you have the Ancient Arabic Order Nobles of the Mystic Shrine that created the Nation of Islam, they were the ones that created a form of Islam with the red flag and the white star and crescent. And Islam was their new tool to colonize the minds of black people, but it backfired on them. And the reason why they would want to do something like that in the first place, why would they want to create another organization, or why are they so obsessed with infiltrating and co-opting these organizations? Well, the reason why they want to do that is because they like to siphon off, or I guess preempt. They want to preempt. You know how George Bush launched a preemptive strike against, was it Iraq, as he called it? In other words, he beat Iraq to the punch because Iraq was supposedly going to attack us, which is a lie. They were not going to attack us. That was just justification for him to launch that strike in the first place. So that's preemptive strike is basically a way of saying he was being proactive. So what these cave people do is that they want to be proactive and get the jump on any type of true organic rival type of movement. And basically to contain that energy, because that energy would otherwise, they wouldn't otherwise be able to control it. Because if it's true organic rival, true organic grassroots type of energy, or a true grassroots type of organization, they won't be able to control it. So they create what they call controlled oppositions. I even read that it was possible that when, when the Christians have their differences of opinion, and Lance, you probably remember reading about when the Protestants broke away from the Catholics,
yes,
because the Catholics were guilty of so many abuses against the people, burning people at the stake and doing all types of heinous, committing all types of heinous crimes. So this group of people
violent.
called the Protestants. Extremely. So I read somewhere that even even Protestantism may have been what they call controlled opposition, because they have to create those types of groups. Because if let's say the Black Power movement, if the Black Power movement is not infiltrated and co-opted by them, the leaders bought off by them, or even destroyed or dismantled by them, or weakened from the inside by them, then that movement has a real chance, since it's independent and not controlled by them, it has a real chance of really overtaking them. So that's why they do that. That's why they like to infiltrate movements. But like I said, it does not always work in their favor. And I think that there was some type of divine guidance working through Elijah, because there's no way he could have known about America falling. There's no way he could have known about some of the teachings the things that he said about America that are now coming to pass, about the dollar, the fall of the American dollar, when he wrote that book, The Fall of America. And when he was packaged and sent to the people, he was actually the right thing that people needed in the right package at the right time, because people didn't necessarily need or maybe would have responded well to a person who's really polished in terms of their speech. But he wasn't a great speaker, but he was a hell of a leader. And he was probably one of the greatest black men we've ever had in this country. But most people don't know about his background.
Exactly.
Most people don't know about the entrepreneurial ventures that he was involved in, international trade and whatnot. So they were afraid of a man like that. So the jury is still out on him, because there's so much more to know about him that most people don't know. And it's funny how they never teach you about him. I know a lot of people, when they talk about different religions, they don't want to use the scriptures, because they feel that, the scriptures is what enslaved us. So we don't want to talk about that. But I utilize the scriptures because that's the best way the most effective way, I think, to break the spell, because you have to really meet people where they are. And you have to speak their language. And if you don't speak their language, you're basically illiterate, and they're not going to listen to you. So when I first started teaching, I utilized the my way is the only way brute force type of strategy.
That's right.
But I found out that was not the most successful. That wasn't the most successful, because it's not cooperative, it's not interactive, it's more dictatorial. And so then I watched Dr. Malachi Z. as he employed a completely different, totally opposite approach. And this is it's a totally opposite but extremely effective approach. And it's what most people would call the Socratic method. you know, the question, the method where you utilize questions to get the wheels of logic and common sense turning in a person's mind. And I don't really like to call it the Socratic method, because as you know, Socrates got his information from the Egyptians, and nothing of the sort came from the so-called Greeks. They studied under the Egyptians, and they stole everything from the ancient Egyptians, and then they put their stamp on it and called it theirs. But the so-called Socratic method was the method that he used, where he would simply ask people questions that would stimulate the wheels of common sense and turn, you know, cause those wheels to start turning, because believe it or not, we're not even using our logic and common sense, because we were never taught that. So, like I mentioned, there's, we talked about the differences of Christianity and Islam. And I think one of the best ways to start to talk about some of these things is, I remember actually two quotes that stand out to me when I think about Islam. One quote said that, if I remember correctly, the guy said that the Islamic varnish only thinly covers a heathen substratum. So basically, Islam has this overlay that is covered by spirituality, but it's really covering heathenism. Because as I mentioned, there are many, many pagan practices in Islam, and I'll talk about some of those in a little bit. There's another quote that I read by this person. He said that, and I might just paraphrase him. He said that it is a mistake to tolerate Islam. It is a mistake to grant it the status of religion and count it among other religions. Islam is not another color in the rainbow of religions. It is the blackness of the night that aims to obliterate all colors. And this is from an ex-Muslim. I forgot his name. I think it was Ali Sina was his name. But the most perplexing quote that I've ever heard about Islam was, it goes like this: Islam is a concoction, not an invention. The only novel thing about it is the genius of Muhammad in mixing existing ingredients and offering it as a new panacea for human ills and forcing it down from the point of a sword. I'll say it again. Islam is a concoction, not an invention. So if it's a concoction, that means it's not divinely inspired. It was created. If it's an invention, it's man-made. So Islam is a concoction, not an invention. The only novel thing, or the only new thing about it, is the genius of Muhammad in mixing existing ingredients and offering it as a new panacea for human suffering and forcing it down by the point of the sword. And that is exactly how Islam was spread. And a lot of people don't want to talk about that, but that happens to be the truth. So, and I want to digress for a minute, because this has nothing to do with Islam. I know a lot of people are thinking about what's going on with the world right now, what's happening with these riots, what's happening with these people just going around killing us with impunity and expecting, well, what I have to say about that is that this is just a big trap that they're trying to set for our people. Because think about this. To have a fire, to start a fire, you need to have three things. I'll come back to Islam in a minute. But to start a fire, you need to have three things. Number one, you need to have flammable material, combustible material. That would be us. We're the international whipping boy, right? Everybody wants to bully and pick on black people out of spite and out of jealousy. And then the other thing you need to start a fire would be some type of incendiary agent, some type of a catalyst, a fire starter. Simply put, you would need a match. So you got the flammable material. And then, of course, you got the match. And then, of course, you need, what else do you need to have a fire going, Lance?
Well, the wind, air, oxygen.
Yes, oxygen to feed the fire. So what would be the catalyst for, we got the flammable material. Oh, that's us. The incendiary agent or the match could be the thing that creates the fire. That would be Euro racism. That would be also That's what I would, or caveman institutional racism is what would be the fire starter or the catalyst or the match or the incendiary agent. Then, of course, you have the oxygen to feed the fire. So how do you feed the fire? You feed the fire with a consistent practice of maltreatment, abuse, disrespect, murder to feed the fire, because you need oxygen to feed the fire. And this type of maltreatment, abuse, disrespect, and murder is equivalent to oxygen in that respect. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, you have, so now you have this raging fire. And this fire is now a conflagration. And now you have, and now they think, oh, we have justification or a mandate to put the fire out. But they never did anything to remove the match or the catalyst that created the fire in the first place. They never did anything to remove the institutional racism, ever. So another way you can look at it is oxygen is the fuel that is needed, or the constant fuel needed to keep the fire going. So what would oxygen be? Another way you can describe oxygen is what they call, some people have probably heard the term moral hazard. Moral hazard, you know? Mm-hmm. Moral hazard is basically when you incentivize abnormal behavior, when you incentivize atypical behavior, or when you incentivize aberrant behavior that's outside of the norm, behavior that deviates from the standard. So when you incentivize, say, criminal behavior, such as what we've been witnessing with these murders, when an individual, this happens when somebody has an incentive to increase their exposure to risk, but they don't have any type of consequences. You can go kill somebody basically with impunity, but nothing's going to happen to you, but they're going to go and protect your house. And but of course, they'll do the opposite to the people that are seeking justice. They'll bear the full weight of the law against them. So this is nothing than what I call, or what they call, their secret societies, ab ordo chaos, which is chaos out of order. I think I even heard George Bush was on TV talking about, yeah, this is ab ordo chaos out of order. That's what these Freemasons believe. They believe that is their form of alchemy, whereby they create a new world on the ashes or from the ashes or the ruins of the old world. And they believe that by destroying the present world, they can create a new world. But so these, what people call them, blue Ku Klux thugs, Blue Klux Klan mm-hmm. in blue on the ground, you know, they are as responsible as, they are as responsible as the seen and the unseen thugs at the top of the food chain, at the top of the political food chain. And these invisible Freemasonic, you know, these are the invisible Freemasonic or satanic manipulators of reality. And I didn't mention, you know, Agent Orange Dum Dum, so-called president, because he's merely a mid-level manager, I would call him. I'll put him in that position because he's merely reading a script. He's playing his part for the real masters behind the scenes. But, you know, he ignores a mountain of unprovoked murders against innocent people, black and white, you know, by thugs in blue. And his job is just basically to add fuel to the fire, to be a cheerleader in a sense. And he's playing his role really well, you know. So I know people want to go out and do what they do and riot and do this and that. But like I said before, they're trying to set a trap, because there's no way you're going to kill somebody in broad daylight and do it so that it's visible, and do it so that the cameras can see you, international cameras can see you, and not expect some type of response. This response is, or the response that they wanted to elicit is very, very obvious to me. So with regard to those invisible manipulators of our society, or I guess our social cultural reality, as well as the ones in the so-called, you know, nation of Is It Real, because they're involved too. The nation of Is It Real, you know, they've stolen that land from the fake but oppressed Palestinians. I say fake because we were over there first. They mistreat our brothers over there. They treat our brothers over there like dirt. But yet they have a grievance with the colonizers of that land, but they don't like black people, many of them. And you talk to the people over there in Palestine, and those brothers and sisters have a hard way to go. But back to the nation of Israel, nobody ever thinks about them because they are the ones who train all of the superintendents of the police departments. All of those superintendents of the police department are flown out to that land to be trained. And so they were the ones who changed the culture from the officer friendly to an occupation force now that treats all Americans as enemies of the state. You know, as it's basically like Palestinians in an intifada, as they call it. You know, you see the intimidation, the two officers on each side of the car, the hands on their guns. You know, all of this is a form of it's from that welfare state that is called Israel. And you know, who are the people orchestrating basically all of this stuff globally? From the fake pandemic to police brutality to the planned COVID injections to the vaccine nanochips to sterilize you. And I think you mentioned that on one of your talks about how that stuff has sterilizing agents, which it does, sterilants, to sterilize you. So do you sincerely think these officers are acting on their own? Or have they had a sit down with somebody in the big house, with some of their higher ups?
Of course.
Meanwhile, the federal government stands aloof. They stand back quietly, watching from afar, as if they are a disinterested party. On the contrary, they are very much vested in this killing project, and their cool, standoffish behavior is nothing more to me than a confirmation of their complicity. You know, so if they were really doing their job, or if they really disapproved of police actions, why not just simply cut their funding? You know, does your boss continue to pay you? Well, you don't have a boss, but does anybody have a boss that continues to pay them if they do a bad job? Do they continue to allow, why would they continue to allow you to even stay on the force if you're killing someone without a reprimand? I mean, unless they want them to continue to be a organizational instrument of their perverted desires, you know? So if that is going on, if that's the case, then the more they harass, it's like the more they equip them. The more they brutalize, the more they gift them with high-tech equipment to further brutalize the people. And the more they kill, the more battle armor they provide them with. And a lot of people don't know this. This is one thing I want to say about that, just to tie that up, and I'll be done with that. But did you know that in every time there's a riot or a disturbance or what they call a civil disobedience demonstration, do you know that they have plants in those crowds to stir up discontent,
of course,
to provoke violence?
Yes, of course.
And if you can even go online. I saw a video the other day. And this has been going on since these people have even as far back as and even maybe before the French Revolution. In the French Revolution, they had these staged demonstrations. They had these people they called the mob orators to whip up the mob and to whip up the crowds. And they would back in those days they would have a block of wood and they would stand on top of the block of wood and they would yell and scream all these indignities about the government this and the government that. And then once they whipped the people up, then they also would import people from different countries like Italy. In French Revolution in particular, they imported these Italian roughnecks to come there and butcher and kill people. Just like Antifa is funded. Black Lives Matter is funded by George Soros to whip up discontent and to provoke people and also with these what they call them agents provocateurs. I mean, I saw pictures where people were there's like maybe 30 cops walking down the street with their battle gear on, yelling to the people, talking to them very disrespectfully and telling them, go in your house. And the people were like standing in their doors and they were filming this, of course, with their cameras. Guess what the police did? They started shooting into the house.
Oh no!
They never talk about that.
Oh damn!
Then there were even police that I saw breaking the windows of stores like Target. They have their little, those hammers that are pointed on the end, so that when you hit a glass, it just goes right through it. They were using that to just break the glasses of the stores and to incite mob violence. And then they would have a justification to blame it on the people, and then have the justification to use what they call proportional force against those people. So that's why I say this is a trap. They're trying to lure us in, and some of us are falling right for it. And they want to use this as a basis to kill us. So I wanted to put that out there just for the family. So that being said, I was dealing with this phenomenon of Islam. And this is great for somebody, like I said, if you're thinking about this or you're confused about it or you maybe even never studied it, I encourage you, if you want, go ahead and study it. It's a waste of time, but if it's something that helps you to pull our people away from this, what I call an alien doctrine or alien ideology, then that's good. That's the reason why I studied it. So at this point, I'll just go over a couple of probably important definitions about Islam for people that want to know about Islam. People have heard about this thing called the Kaaba. The Kaaba, spelled Kaaba. The Kaaba is the sacred cube-shaped building in Mecca that houses another sacred object called the Black Stone. And so when they go to do their pilgrimage in Mecca, they do what they call a they circumambulate. They do a series of circles around this black stone. So that's one definition. And then I mentioned one already, the one called kafir, a kafir. You're a kafir if they call you a kafir, that's like an insult. That means you're an infidel or a non-believer.
Like the book Kafir Boy. Remember that? Yes.
Yes. Exactly. But then they have this other definition that's very interesting. It's called dhimmi. That's called a dhimmi. dhimmi. What is a dhimmi? A dhimmi is a person that has a really special class. A dhimmi is a protection. It's actually a protection class of any non-Muslim. So let's say that we're in the middle of a Muslim country. We're not Muslim. They will label us. They will assign a special class to us. We will be dhimmis. So a dhimmi is a person whose protection is conditional, or it's conditioned on both the acceptance of one inferior status. So you accept that you're inferior to a regular Muslim, and then it's also something that you will accept as a form of payment. So you're required not only to have an inferior status, but you're required to pay certain taxes because you choose not to be Muslim. So it's kind of like a form of compulsory taxation, or you can even call it fiscal oppression. So one of the taxes they call is the jizya. Jizya, Jizya. Jizya is a poll tax. And what happens with the poll tax is that this involves public humiliation in the form of maybe a public rebuke or even physical abuse. So that's one type of tax, the jizya, the poll tax. And the other tax they have is the tax that they call, they will tax you on your land because you choose not to be Muslim. You're basically paying protection money to these people because you choose not to be a Muslim. So this tax is called the land tax, or they call it a kharaj. It's spelled, I may not be pronouncing that right because I'm not Arabic. Kharadj, kharaj. It's a tax on, basically a tax on land, and that's what you have to pay if you are one of those hapless members of the dhimmi class. So it really is just basically a form of apartheid. You have a lesser class than regular Muslims, and it's basically an extortion / protection racket with religious sanctions. And of course, when they talk about Islam, they never talk about these things, right? Never told you about that. But there's a lot more. There's another definition called, it's spelled ISNAD. ISNAD. That's an isnad. Isnad is, an isnad refers to the multi-generational chain of transmitter / witnesses that they supposedly go all the way back to the prophet himself. So to lend credence to their doctrine, they say that this information came from an unbroken chain of transmitters or witnesses that go all the way back to the prophet himself, which of course they have no proof of that, but that's their claim. And so those are some definitions. What are some other definitions? Sheikh. Yeah, there's another definition. You've heard of these terms called sheikhs or sheikhs.
Yes.
It's spelled S-H-A-Y-K-H or S-H-E-I-K-H. These are equivalent to ministers. And those are the two ways to spell it. A sheikh is basically an old man or the head of a tribe. And and I would just say he would be equivalent to like a Christian minister, just to make it for easy understanding. And then, of course, if you study Islam, you'll know about what they call the Maghrib. The Maghrib. It's M-A-G-H-R-I-B. And the Maghrib is basically, it refers to those are the Arabic-speaking African countries west of Egypt. Those are the African countries that have been invaded by the Arabs, but they're African countries that are west of Egypt. So all of those countries that are west of Egypt, that would be called the Maghrib. So if you ever hear that term, you'll know what it means.
Mm-hmm.
What other definitions do they have? Yeah, there's another definition they call it Zina, Z-I-N-A, Zina. Zina is refers to illicit sex, like prostitution, rape, fornication, adultery. And then they have another word. I think I mentioned something about heretics earlier. Mm-hmm. Well, they call them non-believers. They call them heretics. They call them kafirs, but they also call them zindiks, Z-I-N-D-I-Q. And if they want to say heresy in their language, they would say Zandaka, Z-A-N-D-A-Q-A. Zandaka is heresy, and Zindik is a heretic. And then, of course, you've heard about the word imam. An imam is a reciter of the mosque. He recites the prayer, mm-hmm. and he's the head of the community. Of course, women can't do that because they don't have the proper status. And in all the Muslim mosques that I see the women go into, I never see them go into the front door. They have to go through the back door.
That's terrible.
They have to go through, and you notice that a lot of them, they walk behind their men, not with him, but behind him. So if you like male chauvinism, then this might be for you. So I'm just putting the facts out there. You guys can make your own decisions. Mm-hmm. Then I'm going to tell you where it came from. Then they have this other term called Dar al-Islam. If you ever hear that, of course, they're going to say it different and they're going to say it fast, just like if a Puerto Rican is talking, you don't understand what they're saying, or if the Jamaican is talking, or if Mrs. SCURV is talking that Jamaican language, you don't know what she's saying. You know what she's saying, but
oh yeah, I know.
I have to have her slow down. But if you ever hear this term, Dar al-Islam,
yeah,
that's referring to the Muslim community where there is peace. To them, that's holy land. So to them, Dar al-Islam would be like a mosque, or it would be their Arab country. But there's an opposite of that called the Dar al-Harb, D-A-R, then the next word A-L, next word H-A-R-B. That's the opposite of the Dar al-Islam. And the Dar al-Harb would be the abode of war. It would be a land that is not under Muslim sovereignty. So America, for example, would be considered Dar al-Harb, a place of war, because it is not yet under Muslim sovereignty. And therefore, in Dar al-Harb, warfare is okay to prosecute in that land because they say that warfare in the name of the propagation of Islam in that land is acceptable. Whereas in the Dar al-Islam, it's already set up to be Islamic, so they don't have to worry about those particular areas. But they want to spread the Dar al-Harb to the rest of the planet. That's their goal. So there's another concept that they have, the concept or the doctrine of the infallibility of the consensus of the religious scholars. So in other words, when their religious scholars come to an agreement, their agreement, no matter whether they're corrupt, no matter whether they're pedophiles, no matter who they are, no matter what type of low moral character they have, if they're religious scholars, to them, their word is infallible. And this whole concept or doctrine of the infallibility of the consensus of the religious scholars is known as ijma. Ijma, IJMA, Ijma. That's what they call it. Okay, let's see what other definitions. You've heard of, probably haven't heard of. You've heard of Sharia law,
Yes,
right?
yes.
I'll cover that in a minute, but there's something called Qiyya, Qiyya. Qiyya is one of the 4 parts of Sharia, because Sharia has 4 parts. Qiyya is basically a method of reasoning by analogy. That's just something that they made up. Qiyya is a method of reasoning by analogy, but what Sharia law is more like a dictatorial type of law, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And you hear about a lot of people saying that they're going to have Sharia law. Sharia law is the type of law that will put us under what we call what you would call a theocracy or a religious dictatorship. So Sharia law is basically another way of saying Islamic law. And it basically has 4 parts. The first part would be the teaching of the Quran itself, so the Quran. Then the second part of Sharia law would be the concept of the infallible consensus of the ulama, the people I just talked about, that infallible consensus. Then you have what they call hadith. Hadith are those man-made books that they say deal with the teachings or the sayings of the Prophet, the hadith. And just like in the Christian faith, you have what they call the New Testament. The New Testament is a set of man-made books. In the New Testament, you have the book of Acts. You have the book of, you have the book of Acts, the book of Romans, the book of, you have 1 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians. You have the book of Ephesians. You have the book of Philippians, Colossians. You have the book of Galatians. You have the book of Titus. You have the book of, what is the other books? A couple other books, Hebrew, Philemon, and then you have First Timothy. Those are all a set of man-made books. And the interesting thing about those books, which is similar to the Quranic books or the hadiths, which are the teachings, they call them sayings of men, the teachings, sayings of men. The hadith, it's similar how they evolved, because the hadith, or these books, this book, the Quran, first of all, was written, if I remember correctly, it was written about 120 years after the death of the Prophet Muhammad. He died in 632 AD, so these books were written. It's just like coming 130 years after Martin Luther King and writing some books about him, you know. In a similar way with the New Testament, which came from the Old Testament, those books were written anywhere from like around 45 AD until about 65 AD. So that was written well after the death, or as they call it, the death of Christ. 45 years, 65 years, all these years after the death of Christ. Just like they made a set of man-made books in Christianity, and they made a man-made set of books in Islamic culture. So that's just a similarity. So I talked to you about Demis. I talked to you about the Qiyya, which is a part of the Sharia law. Sharia law is basically a dictatorship. Then you've probably heard the word Sunnah. The Sunnah.
Yes.
The Sunnah is basically the tradition or the practice of Muhammad, the so-called practices of what Muhammad did, the things that he did, the traditions of him. They follow those to the T, or they try to. Let's see, what's another thing? We talked about the Isnad, the multi-generational chain of transmitters that go all the way back to the Prophet himself, as they say. We talked about, there's another word that they call fatwa. You've heard of that word before, right? Fatwa,
yeah.
Fatwa.
Yes.
You know what that is? That's
No.
a hit.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's a hit. That's a contract on your life. So one of those Muslim imams can issue a fatwa. That's what they issued against a guy that wrote a book about them. They issued this fatwa because they don't want people to be critical of their faith, you know. And again, if there's no allowance for freedom of expression, what type of ideology is this? They say that they are of peace, but how is that peaceful when your religious leaders can issue fatwas against people and have them executed or murdered? You know? So we talked about the different definitions. I think you guys got enough definitions for now, but I'll tell you a little bit about Saudi Arabia right now. When most people think about Saudi Arabia, what do they think about? What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think about Saudi Arabia?
Well, I know better than most, but for a while,
Yeah, you probably gonna give it away.
yeah, I had the negative images you know, from younger, even though I was still told, you know,
Mm-hmm.
television had a strong, you know, way of it was always you're thinking about, like in the Middle East, you're thinking about bombs and buildings blowing up
Yes.
and war and people strapping
Yes.
up and stuff like that. And when you see real people there, you know, walking around talking, going to the malls and different things, and it's like, wow, you know, so I can understand why people have a negative look on everyday life there.
Yeah. Well, when I think about Saudi Arabia, I was thinking about it in terms of in the context of geography, like where it's located. Most people say it's Middle East.
Yeah,
Most people say Middle East,
yeah,
right?
They say it's Middle East. Hold on 1 second. I hit click something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they say it's not Africa.
Exactly. Saudi Arabia is actually a part of the African continent and is not located in the Middle East. And it's due to the fact that it's naturally filled with water. Now it's referred to as the Red Sea, but that's not natural. It has the appearance of being separate. That gives it the appearance of being separate from Africa. So people need to understand. They need to understand that. So Arabia is actually an incorrect term when you think about it as well, because just to touch on Arabia for a minute, because it's so connected to Islam. Arabia was actually named after the Sultan Abdullah Aziz ibn Saud of the Saud family. The Sultan Abdullah Aziz ibn Saud, A-Z-I-Z, ibn, I-B-N, which means the son of Saud. Sultan Abdullah Aziz ibn Saud. That's where they got the name from. This country was actually invaded by Hindus. This country was invaded by Hindus in 1926. It was named Arabia. That's where the name came from. And you know, after the king himself named himself king. He wasn't a king, but he named himself king after this invasion. But the original inhabitants of that land were they called them Manaeans or the Himyarites, the Sabians, blacks, and the Shemites. And this is where you get the name Queen of Sheba, Saba, Sabian, same thing. That's what the Quran even mentions the Sabians, but never mentions their racial origin. And it even has an entire book called Seba, which is the same as Shem or Sheba. This chapter is dedicated to the Quran, to the Queen of Shem. And that's what they're talking about, the Queen of Sheba in a veiled type of way. But I found that many people that are involved in Islam, they do not study much at all. They feel that it's not necessary to study because they feel that they found the final truth. And as a consequence, they don't do much study and research. And another thing I found is that they pretty much go to the mosque. They're not really readers of those books. They go to the mosque to get their instruction, just like Christians go to the Christian churches to get their instructions. I mean, they may be able to quote some verses. You have some that are, you know, they want to get jiggy with it and make you think that they're religious just because they can quote scriptures. But that doesn't make them spiritual, you know. But the present day Saudi Arabians, basically, these people are a mixture of like Sabians, Shemites, Hindus, and Turkish people. And when the Hindus mixed with the Turkish, guess what they produced? They produced the Indo-European. So here we are dealing with the Indo-Europeans again, dealing with their doctrine. And the god of the Sabians, by the way, was a moon god called Allah, Al-Ilah, which today they shorten it to the word Allah, a moon god that they were worshiping. And if you go to places like, say, Algeria was originally dark-skinned, woolly-haired people, but their national complexion has now changed as a result of a variety of different invasions. Like, they're a mixture of like Turkish, Germanic, like the Vandals from Germany, French, Roman, and Italian, you know. So they're a mixture. And so people look at those different lands in Africa, they just wonder, oh, this is where these people are from. Yeah, they're from here, but they're really invaders. Or like the original people of Iraq, they were known as that was known as Mesopotamia, as we talked about before, where the Sumerians, Babylonians, Assyrians, Persians, you know, they lived, and they were there between like 4th and the 3rd century BC, the 4th and the 3rd millennium BC, and all of these people were black people. They all had dark skin and woolly hair, you know. And they were later invaded by Greeks, Turks, Arabs, Mongols. And so now you get that mixture that you have right now in Iraq. So after they were fighting with the Arabs, who invaded in 641 AD, that group lost power, and then the Turks came to power, and then they suffered the same fate as the Arabs. And then around, let's say, 1914, when they were being ruled by the Ottoman Turks, the British Allied forces, they came and they invaded southern Iraq, and they've had a foothold there since that time, and they pushed northward. But by 1917, roughly, they had taken Iraq, and by 1918, that was the entire country. So that was around the time of World War I anyway. Mm-hmm. So now Iraq is like a combination of Greeks, Persians, British, and Turks. And then you have Iran. Iran was also originally ruled by a group known as the Elamites or the Elamites, Elamites. And if you go on Pinterest and look at some of the original Iranians, you'll see exactly what they look like. Dark skin, woolly hair, dressed rather regally, like kings. But of course, all of those lands have been mixed. Now, speaking of some of the origins of Islam, you have what I call the Sabian influence, because remember, those Sabians were some of the blacks that lived there in that land. And the Queen of Sheba they would go to those types of lands. But you know how you heard about, or you hear about, actually there was a time when Muhammad was praying 7 times a day, but the Sabian, they shortened that. But, modern Islam features like 5 sets of obligatory prayers, per day. So every day they have to do five prayers a day, and you wonder where do those practices come from. But surprisingly, when you think about it, the ancient Sabians, the ancient blacks that were living in that land, they also observed a set of daily prayers, 7 prayers to be exact. Because remember, I told you, Muhammad used to pray 7 times a day, but they shortened that. So when these prayers were adopted in Islam, those 7 were reduced to only 5 daily prayers, the 2 remaining prayers being optional. And that was done by Muhammad himself to do what to quote unquote release humanity, to give them some relief. And modern Islam is also unique in that it shuns idolatry, right? Mm-hmm. They shun images, and they shun a priesthood. They supposedly don't have a priesthood, but unbeknownst to most believers is the knowledge that one of the hallmarks of the Sabian culture was that it was they had the absence of any of those same elements, the same elements that are championed today by by Islam as originals, And then Islam has like they have a 30-day fast, right? They have a Meccan pilgrimage, and then they have what they call those sacred springs and stones. But when you check the Sabian culture, all this indicates that they also had a 30-day fast. The Sabians also had a pilgrimage to Mecca, and they also had what they call sacred springs and stones. For example, in Arabic, a sacred spring, where water comes from, is known as a zen, Z-E-N-Z-E-N. And while the most popular sacred stones to them today, that's known as the Kaaba, which we talked about earlier, that the black stone that they walk around, or they circumambulate, or do a circular pilgrimage around when they do their Hajj. So basically, they had all of the essential elements necessary for the blossoming of Islam 1,000 years before the advent of Muhammad. So that shows you right there that it's a borrowed culture. And if you get a book, one of the books I got that from was called, I don't want people to think I'm just making this up. One of the books was called Black Arabia and the African Origin of Islam. Mm-hmm. And I'll send you the list later. Black Arabia and the African Origin of Islam. And then another book, Dr. Malachi Z. York wrote a couple books about Islam in great depth. One book was called The Religion of Islam Unmasked. So he basically unmasks the religion of Islam. And then there's another book called 360 Questions to Ask a Sunni Muslim. 360 Questions to Ask a Sunni Muslim. Remember I told you when he wrote that book, they tried to assassinate him. They were so pissed off.
That's crazy.
That he revealed so many things about Islam, about the truth, about the Arabs and Islam and their decadent ways. So they were really pissed off with that book. So more things about where Islam comes from. You guys will find this. I think you'll find this very interesting. Where did Islam come from? Where did it come from? Now, think about this word Allah. If you guys are by a computer right now, you might want to look this up. Go to Google and type in Hebrew Strong's number 427. And when I say Hebrew Strong's, these are the words that you will look up, like if you look up a word in the Bible. That would be the number, the Hebrew the Hebrew equivalent to the English word that you would see in a Christian Bible. So if you look up a word in the Bible, let's say there's a chapter in the Bible in the book of Joshua, chapter 24, verse 26, where it talks about an oak tree. But if you look that word up and you go to Google and you type in Hebrew Strong's number 427, you'll see what the word is. And maybe some people in the audience have done that already, and they'll see what word they come up with. Hebrew Strong's number 427. What word do you come up with when you see that?
Let me see here.
What'd you find?
Okay.
I know, Lance, you know that you're going to find it, right?
it says Allah? I mean...
Yes. This is just one way to show you that this Islamic religion is a plagiarized doctrine. So the Hebrew Strong's number 427, when you go to the book of Joshua, chapter 24, verse 26, the word there is oak, but the Hebrew word, the English word is oak, like oak tree, but the Hebrew word is Allah, or actually they spell it like this. They spell it H-A-A-L-L-A-H, or they may spell it H-I-L-L-A-A-H, or they may just come out and just say Allah. That's what it says. So it shows that the word Allah is also a variation of the word Elah, or Ella, or Elo, because that's a Hebrew word too. Elo, E-L-O-H, or E-L-A-H. So basically, the Prophet Muhammad, if you know anything about him, you'll know. Sometimes they call him different names. There's a different name they refer to him by. One of his names is Mustafa Muhammad al-Amin. Mm-hmm. The other name is Muhammad ibn Abdullah. Now, in the Arabic language, whenever you use the word ibn means the son of. So Muhammad, the son of Abdullah. And if you take the word Abdullah and you break that word down, you'll have the word ABD. That word in Arabic means slave. And if you take the rest of it, ULLAH, it's referring to Allah. So it's just telling you that his father was actually worshiping Allah, or he was a slave to Allah before the Prophet Muhammad was even born. That's why they changed his name later to Mustafa Muhammad al-Amin, to hide the fact that his father had the name, or that he was, to hide the fact that his name was originally Muhammad ibn Abdullah, to hide the fact that they were actually worshiping. Their tribe was called the Quraysh tribe, K-U-R-A-I-S-H, the Quraysh tribe. That just basically means big fish or shark. The Quraysh tribe was a backwards tribe of Arabs, and they were already worshiping Allah. And because, like I mentioned before, just a minute ago, Abdullah means a slave of Allah. So how could he be a slave of Allah before Muhammad was even introduced himself? Before Muhammad even introduced him as a new God. So it is a God much older than Islam, even used by pagans and by Israelites. And it has been recorded in many books. There's one book called Allah. It's called The Foreign Vocabulary of the Quran. The last name of the author is named Jeffrey, for people that want to go and do their own research. The Foreign Vocabulary of the Quran. So it's right there, and it's plain as day to show you that this is a borrowed religion. And in terms of some of the other origins of Islam, now there are these Quranic stories that you read about. People have to understand that these stories come from different sources. Like, you've heard of the Gnostics, right? Or the Gnostics.
Yes.
The Gnostics were the group of Christians back then, before all these other denominations came around. And the Gnostics were brutally suppressed by the Catholic Church. Number one, because they didn't believe that they needed a third party to get to God. They felt that they can do it on their own. And number two, they talked about extraterrestrials and reptilians. So they suppressed that information. But if you study the Gnostic texts, like the Nag Hammadi scrolls, NAG, next word HAMMADI, if you study those Gnostic scrolls, you'll find out that the story of Jesus is not the story of Jesus not dying on the cross is from the Gnostic scrolls, or the story of Jesus not being God is from the Gnostic scrolls. And of course, Islam heavily borrowed from the Gnostic texts. If you know about the Abraham story or the Nimrod story, those stories are from the Gnostic scrolls. And basically, there was a man, Muhammad's teachings, they also came from Waraka ibn Nawfal, spelled W-A-R-A-Q-A. Next word, Ibn, son of, I-B-E-I-B-N. Nawfal, N-A-U-F-A-L. Waraka ibn Nawfal. That was where one of the sources of Muhammad's teachings, because Waraka ibn Nawfal was the Khadija's uncle. Khadija was one of the Prophet Muhammad's wives, and Khadija, that was her uncle. And so his uncle, or Khadija, was actually a Gnostic Christian. And his last wife, Mary, was also a Coptic Christian and a Gnostic. So Muhammad got his teachings from the Gnostic Christians, you see. And there's another book here that's called, written by Dr. Malachi Z. York, called the Akasha Records. And in the Akasha Records, he shows how the Quran, or the teachings of the Quran, came from a variety of different sources, like the Gnostic Church, the Egyptian Coptic Christian Church, the Ethiopian Coptic Christian Church, the Nazarite Church, the Hebrew Church, or the really synagogue, because they don't have churches. And they also draw from the teachings of Zoroastrianism, which is from Persia. And then they also, like, if you look at the word in Ethiopia, they use the word mosque. That's where the word came. That's an Ethiopian word. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
They never teach that. It's an Ethiopian word. It's a totally borrowed religion. And in terms of other origins of this faith, this part you're not going to believe. In the book that I mentioned that Dr. Malachi Z. York wrote, called "Is the Religion of Islam Unmasked?" Pages 99 to about 100, he talked about where the religion of Islam came from, who created the religion of Islam, and why they created it. So one of the first ones he mentioned involved in the creation of Islam was a man named Saint Augustine. He was a well-known, high-ranking Roman Catholic Christian, and he was Nubian. He was black. And also the Vatican Pope, and also the Jesuit priests of the Catholic Church. So those individuals were involved in creating a new religion, and I'll show you the tie-in just a second. And then, of course, I mentioned Khadija. Khadija is the 40-year-old wife of the Prophet Muhammad, and her cousin was named Waraka ibn Nawfal. His name could also be spelled W-A-R-I-K-A. Waraka ibn Nawfal, her cousin, either her cousin or her uncle, I'm not remembering right now, and a woman named Sarah. So that's where they got the Quran from, but it also comes from, what happened was St. Augustine, Khadija, and her cousin Waraka ibn Nawfal, they wanted to control the trade that occurred in Mecca. And their tool for controlling that trade was called Islam. And this tool was controlled by power, or this trade was originally controlled by powerful Arab tribes at that time. And in terms of other sources of Islam, they also have teachings that come from ancient Babylonia. And I did mention Jewish, and I mentioned Roman Catholicism. Because even if you go into the Quran and you go to the 19th book, they call the Virgin Mary. There's a chapter called the Virgin Mary in the Quran. The 19th book in the Quran is called the Virgin Mary. And of course, Quran is spelled K-O-R-A-N or Q-U-R-A-A-N or Q-U-R-A-N. They spell it different ways. So that chapter in the 19th book called The Virgin Mary is referring to Mary, the supposed mother of Jesus. And now, of all the people that they could have written about, why would they choose Mary, a biblical figure, instead of somebody from the Prophet Muhammad's family? You know, just something to think about. And then if you think about some of the words in the Quran, or some of the words in that faith, all of those words, well, many of those words have been plagiarized from other languages or taken from other doctrines, and they've been inserted into the Quran as if they are authentic and original. Remember that word when I talked about the Catholic Church and how they were involved in the creation of Islam?
Yes.
Well, there's a word that they call salat. You've probably heard of salat, right?
Yes.
Salat is prayer, or morning prayer, I think it is that they call it. They spell it S-A-L-A-A-T. Well, salat is related to the word salutations. Salutations. And of course, salutations is spelled S-A-L-U-T-A-T-I-O-N-S. But salutations is also related to another word, an Italian word called salute. You know, when Italians, when they have their wine glasses and they click the glasses together and they say salute.
Yes.
That's where they got the word salutations from, or salat, the practice of salat. And then if you think about some other words, like in Hebrew, they have a concept of charity called, they call it, in Hebrew, they spell it T-S-A-K-A-T, or zakat. But in Arabic, they took that same word and they changed it around, and they use the word Z-A-K-A-T. And they call it zakat instead of sakat, which is from the Hebrew. And then if you think about different people in the Bible, like Abraham, right? Abraham, also known as Ibrahim, in the Arabic language, or in Islamic language, they call him Ibrahim. Ibrahim is from Abraham, so they have to flip the language to make you think that it's original, but it's not. And then they took the word, like you've heard about Lot and Sodom and Gomorrah.
Of course.
Well, Lot, everybody knows about that story. Lot, in Islam, they took the name Lot and they just dropped the O in the word Lot and they put U in there, so they came up with Lut. And then the concept of judgment, that came from the Old Testament, which they took. The concept of, you know how they say in Christianity, they say amen?
Yes.
They may say peace. In Hebrew, how do they say peace in Hebrew? They say shalom aleichem, shalom aleichem. But they say in Arabic, what do they say? Assalamu alaikum.
Same thing.
That's what they say. And then prostration. When they do the prostration, think about all the biblical patriarchs in the Old Testament that whenever they would pray, they would fall on their face. When Jesus prayed in the Garden of Gethsemane, according to the Bible, he fell on his face. When David would pray, he fell on his face. When Abraham would pray, he fell on his face. All these people will fall on their faces. That's where they get the prostration from. You know how when they pray and they kneel down and they put their head to the ground?
Mm-hmm.
That's prostration. So what else do they have? The veils that they have are stolen. That's a Judaic practice. And it kind of relates to the Egyptian queen or Egyptian ruler, Pharaoh, I'll call her. She's actually a Pharaoh, Hatshepsut, or Hatshepsut, depending on how you want to pronounce it. So those are some of the origins of Islam. There's a lot of tie-ins, but just thought I would mention those things. And there's another thing that's really interesting too. They have different types of I guess crimes. You call them crimes in Islam. And let's say, for example, if you are a person that steals in Islam, they can cut your hand off. So they amputate your right hand. If you take it up a notch and you want to become a highway robber, then they will not only amputate your right hand, but they'll amputate your feet and your hands. And then if you commit highway robbery with murder, then that could be death by the sword or crucifixion. So they'll either crucify you or they'll kill you with a sword. Now, if you drink wine, that's a penalty for that too. You can't drink wine in Islam, and depending on the country would be different depending on the severity of the severity of the laws depends on the country because it's different from Muslim country to country. But in general, wine drinking carries a penalty of 80 lashes. They will actually lash you in public, so you can't drink wine. If somebody commits adultery and you lie on them, then that's 80 lashes for you. If someone commits fornication, that's 100 lashes. If someone commits adultery, that's death by stoning. They'll stone you to death. And of course, the only people you see getting stoned are women. You can go online right now. You see women getting stoned to death for committing adultery. But what if she was raped?
Right.
But of course, in Islam, the man's authority is above the woman, so that doesn't count. But guess what the greatest crime of all is in Islam? The greatest crime of all, greater than all those crimes, greater than adultery, greater than fornication, greater than false accusation of adultery, greater than wine drinking, greater than theft, greater than highway robbery, greater than highway robbery with murder. What's greater than that? Wow. The greatest crime in Islam is, guess what? You won't believe this.
What?
The greatest crime in Islam is apostasy. Apostasy is when you decide to leave the fold of Islam. You are an apostate. Yes. What's the crime? What's the penalty? Death.
Well, so that's like that's a spiritual religious dictatorship.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now, this is something you also won't believe. You know how the Muslims have a prohibition against pork?
Yeah.
They don't eat pork, right? You notice that in the Old Testament, they don't eat pork either, right?
Right.
The question is this, and this is a good question to ask a Muslim. Since do your research, you'll find out that there were no pigs that existed in 5th century Arabia. There were no pigs in 5th century Arabia. So why is there a prohibition on pork, on an animal that didn't exist? And if other animals, and another thing to consider, if other animals consumed by Muslims potentially carry diseases worse than, say, trichinosis, because everybody knows that the pig has those little eggs that hatch inside your bloodstream and they cause different types of ailments, pains, headaches. Mm-hmm. They call it trichinosis.
You can't even cook it out.
Can't even cook it out. Mm-mm. As a matter of fact, they say the pig is such a poisonous animal that it has a natural sewage system built into it, where it leaks pus all the time. It's a filthy animal. Yeah. So if the animals consumed by Muslims carry disease, potentially carry disease causing microorganisms, and they cause things like trichinosis or like Malta fever. Goats you can get Malta fever from goats. Or you can get from sheep and cattle, you can get anthrax, which would be known. So if that's true, if all these things are true, why wouldn't the Quran, in its infinite wisdom, ban those types of animals as well? Why wouldn't if chickens and goats, which also eat their own dung, if they are as filthy as hogs, which they are, why not ban them too? The answer is because there's not a divine admonition, but it's a case of flagrant plagiarism from Jewish sources. That's why they utilize that, because like I said again, it's a hodgepodge, a religion that was just cobbled together, And you think about the word amen. They say amen in Christianity. They say what do they say in Hebrew? They say, I think it's umain or amen, amen. Or something close to that. In the Arabic or in the Quranic faith, they say Amin, Amiyyn. You see how it's all the same? Mm-hmm. And then instead of saying Satan, they say Shaitan. You've heard of Shaitan. Yeah. That's where they got it from. Same thing. And then Allah is stolen from. You go into the Hebrew. Allah is stolen from El Elo. In Hebrew. And then the plural version of Allah is Allahumma, just like you have a plural version of El Elo, which is Elohim. That's a conversation for another time, but that's basically where they got these terms from. But another thing that's really interesting is the origin of the face veil. You know how these women, they wear these face veils in Islam?
Yes.
Well, you'll find out that prostitutes in Morocco, you know that they wear face veils too, and so do the Egyptian prostitutes, as well as other female Arab prostitutes. They wear face veils. And the reason why they do this, well, this practice actually predates Islam, and it can also be found in the Torah itself. Go into the Torah, you'll see in Genesis chapter 38, verse 13 through 21. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick. Genesis. Just amazing how this is so flagrantly done. But nobody takes the time to do the research to find out. And they're so busy saying that they're so different from each other, but they won't take the time to see what they have in common. Find that common ground, and then the whole religious foundation will unravel. And so that's how they keep people divided, by having them focus on their differences and not on their similarities. Mm-hmm. Genesis chapter 30. I just wanted to read this real quick. 38. How many people listening to this?
Let me see. Right now, it's 412 people.
Wow. They're awfully silent. I would think they wouldn't even be here. I would think I'm talking to myself. All right. I want you guys to listen to this. This is Genesis chapter 38, verse 13 through 21. Okay. So basically, this is a story about a woman named Tamar. Tamar, she strategically took off she was actually in mourning because her husband was killed. And so she took off of her widow's clothes and she put on a veil, and she strategically placed herself on the road, on the way to a place called Timnath in the story, Timnath, because she knew that her father-in-law, Judah, was on the way there to shear his sheep. So the bottom line is, when he encountered this prostitute on the road with her veil, he didn't recognize her and he asked for sex. Just to let you know that the face veil is associated with prostitution in the Arab world. So this is what it says. And it was told, this is basically his daughter-in-law, Judah's daughter-in-law, because his son and her husband was killed by God in this particular chapter, by the way, too. Yeah, actually killed by God. It's kind of terrible, but it says here, and it was told Tamar, saying, behold, your father-in-law goeth up to Timnah. They say Timnah, but it's really Timnath. Depends on which version you read. He went up to Timnath to shear his sheep. So he was going to a place to get his sheep shorn, to have their hair cut. And it says here, and she put her widow's garments off from her and covered her with a veil and wrapped herself and sat in an open place. So she took off her widow's garments, her widow's clothes, her mourning clothes, and she put on her prostitution gear. And she sat in an open place to let people know that she's ready and available for prostitution, for that type of thing. Right. And it says here, which is by the way to Timnah. For she saw that Shelah was grown, and she was not given unto him to wife. When Judah saw her, he thought her to be a harlot, because she had covered her face. To underscore my point, that's what the face veil was associated with. And when he turned unto her by the way and said, come, go, I pray thee, let me come in unto thee. Come in unto thee means let me basically have intercourse with you. For he knew not that she was his daughter-in-law. And she said, what will you give me that thou mayest come into me? So in other words, yeah, we can do this, but these are my terms. What type of money are you talking about paying me? And he said, I will send thee a kid from the flock. And she said, wilt thou give me a pledge till thou send it? And he said, what pledge shall I give thee? And she said, thy signet and thy bracelets. So in other words, you give me the bracelets, then we'll be good. That'll be my payment. And thy staff that is in thine hand. And he gave it to her and came in unto her, and she conceived by him. Let's see. And Judah sent the kid by the hand of his friend and the Adulamite to receive his pledge from the woman's hand, but he found her not. Then he asked the men of that place, saying, where is the harlot that was openly by the wayside? And they said, there was no harlot in this place. So basically, if you read the rest of the story, it just underscores the point that the face veil came from harlotry, but this harlotry was something that was a practice in Judaic faith, in the Judaic culture, and that's where they stole. That's where the Quran actually plagiarized this practice from. Well, the people that put the Quran together, because just like you have the Old Testament and the New Testament put together by a group of people, the Quran was put together by a group of people, not just one person.
That's right.
So the bottom line is that when he encountered this prostitute on the road with her veil, he didn't recognize her. He asked for sex, made a deal with her, had intercourse with her after she had asked him what would he give her in return for sex. So in that chapter, Genesis 24, let's see. When you go down a little further, actually in another chapter, Genesis 24, let me go there real quick. Genesis 24. See if it comes up. Genesis 24. Genesis 24, 65. Hold on just a minute. Well, it's not coming up now. Basically, if you go to I remember from the book of Genesis towards the end of it, it talks about a woman taking a face veil and covering herself. So these practices of wearing the face veil, that's where it came from. That's where it came from. And then you have this concept in Islam they call it, what do they call that concept? Not binding partners with Allah. You know how they say, La ilaha illa Allah? That means there's no God but Allah. La ilaha illa Allah. There's no God but Allah. That's Quran chapter 47, I think, verse 19. And then you have the saying where they say Muhammad Rasul Allah. Muhammad is his messenger. That's what it means. There's no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. So they basically take the phrase from Quran chapter 47, La ilaha illallah, and then they take another phrase from another verse, chapter 33 in the Quran 40, where they say Muhammad Rasul Allah. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. So what they're basically doing is these are two separate quotes in the Quran that are never actually merged together. But for some reason they are merged together verbally by Muslims anyway, when they say, there's no God but Allah and Muhammad is his messenger. But this is wrong according to Quran 22 verse 26, which says you cannot bind partners with Allah. Right. When you put Muhammad's name next to Allah, you are not only making them equals, but you are, you're joining or connecting or conjoining them. So they are basically committing what they call the crime of setting up a partner with Allah, which is to devise a sin, according to their beliefs. It even says in the Quran somewhere that to set up a partner with Allah is to devise a sin most heinous and deep. So they're basically binding partners with Allah, according to them, according to their teachings. Now, what else can I say about the Arabs? Oh, yeah. If you think about the Arab genetics, I know I'm kind of all over the place tonight.
No, we got you though. I mean, you're breaking it down in bite-sized pieces, and it's not like you have to. We're with you, man, because everybody's hanging in there. I mean, the numbers are there.
Okay. Well, Arabs are a mixture of what they call East Indians plus Euro-Arabs, like Turks, Euro-Asiatics, or Indo-Arabs. And they basically tied into the vine, tied into our genetics, the real Arabs. And it's really funny how we have our people following these folks thinking that they're the real Arabs. When we're the real Arabs, we were the real people that lived in Saudi Arabia, which is a false name because it wasn't called Saudi Arabia, because like I mentioned earlier, it was from King Saud, who called himself a king. But those were the original people and that lived in that region of the world. There's another funny thing that's really funny to me too. You know the story. You probably heard the story because you probably have run across many people that are Muslim or Islamic. They talk about how Muhammad ascended or was transported by Allah on a flying donkey. They called it a buraj. I think they called it Barwhaj. Well, they spell it in different ways. So this flying donkey supposedly transported him from the Dome of the Rock. Listen to this very closely, family. This flying donkey supposedly transported him from the Dome of the Rock to Masjid al-Aqsa. So from one place to another, from the Dome of the Rock to Masjid al-Aqsa. Masjid, of course, is spelled M-A-S-J-I-D. Next word A-L, next word A-Q-S-A-A. For people that are Muslim, they don't need that spelling, but for people that are not, that might want to research that, that's for them. So he was transported on the back of a donkey from the Dome of the Rock to Masjid al-Aqsa, which is the second holiest shrine in Islam. They also call it a buruj, B-A-R-U-G. Different names. Basically, it's a mythological creature that's a flying donkey. But the thing is, Masjid al-Aqsa wasn't even built yet. This incident is recorded in the 17th chapter of the Quran. Supposedly in 618 AD is when it occurred. So if it occurred in 618 AD, how could this be possible when this mosque wasn't even built until 99 years later? It was built almost 100 years later, but yet they say that this man, this supposed prophet, flew on the back of this flying donkey from the Dome of the Rock to Masjid al-Aqsa, which wasn't even built yet. And in terms of when it was built, there was a caliph named Abdul Malik that built it from 709 to 717 AD. And some say his son Al-Walid built it in 710 AD. But it was after this the time that he supposedly did it. So it doesn't add up. And people that are religious, unfortunately, they don't ask these types of questions. They don't ask these questions. Now, I think I mentioned earlier about how these Arabs were worshiping. They were worshiping Allah before the advent or the time of the Prophet Muhammad, or the man that they call the Prophet Muhammad. And they do talk about how the Quran even mentions how it says in Quran chapter 9, I think verse 97, it says the desert Arabs are the ignorant hypocrites. It says it refers to desert Arabs as ignorant hypocrites. And to tie into that, when you think about how people worshiped Allah before Islam, there was a guy that did a study on that. The name of his book was called The Moon God, Allah, and the Archaeology of the Middle East, copyright in 1994. And he also wrote Islamic Invasion in 1992. So The Moon God, Allah, and the Archaeology of the Middle East. And he also wrote Islamic Invasion in 1992. And what he basically was saying was that there is archaeological evidence of Allah and Allat, A-L-L-A-T, the feminine version of Allah. They were found, or they were pagan Arab moon god and goddess, or a pagan Arab moon god and goddess prior to the birth of Islam in Arabia, in Palestine, in Lebanon, in Iraq, in many places. And thousands of these inscriptions were found by many different archaeologists. But if you try to put this information out, these people want to try to assassinate you, kill you. You know, if their doctrine is so true, why can't it stand on its own merits? And so, even in the Quran, it talks about. It asks the question: have you seen Lot and Uzzah? Lot and Uzzah were three of the daughters of. He had three daughters. One of his daughters' name was Allat, A-L-L-A-T. The other daughter was Al-Uzzah, A-L-U-Z-Z-A. And then the other name was Manat, M-A-N-A-T. And the question is even asked in the Quran, have you seen Lot and Uzzah? It's totally out of context. And it's like, what does this have to do with spirituality and spiritual growth?
Right.
Nothing. It's just inserted there for filler material. So the dominant religion of Arabia was the cult of the moon. And even when popularity of the moon god started to decrease or wane, the Arabs remained true to their conviction that the moon god was the greatest of all gods. And that's why Mecca was still built as a shrine for the moon god. And that's why Allah is never defined in the Quran, because Muhammad, he assumed the pale Arabs already, they already knew who Allah was. Because even in the Quran it says, Allah, your Lord and cherisher of your fathers of old. How could he be the cherisher and how could he be the Lord and cherisher of your fathers of old? And like I mentioned before, that's why his father's name was called Abdullah. Ab equals slave. Allah equals Allah, a slave to Allah. So he was a slave to Allah before Muhammad was born. So if he wasn't a pagan god, then why was his father a slave to him? So that's why the pale Arabs continually insist that Allah is alone. This is the really funny thing that gets me. They insist that Allah is alone and has no partners. You've heard that before. They call that what? The Tawheed of Allah, the oneness of Allah. He is Allahu Akbar, the greatest or the oldest. Oldest compared to who?
There you go.
Compared to 359 other gods. Compared to 359 other gods and goddesses that the Arabs worshipped as a part of their pagan moon cult. And that's why they have a symbol of a star, and a crescent and a moon. A crescent is a part of a moon. And that's why Allah is known as Sin, the moon god, and Sin as in Sinai, the Sinai Peninsula, a peninsula in Arabia. So I hope that it all makes sense. But back to this concept of the oneness of Allah. The biggest question a person that's Muslim can ask is, if he's one, why does he have so many friends? Why does he have so many friends? Why does he have so many partners? You know how they say that he doesn't have any partners? If he's all that they say he is, why does he have so many friends? What do I mean by that? This is what I mean. Check this out. The Quran uses the word we a lot. All you have to do is just go through the book. I don't know if you guys have ever studied or read it, but if you go through the book, the Quran, you'll read many cases where it talks about we. We did this and we did that. Like I mentioned, the Tawheed. By the way, the word Tawheed, they spell that Tawhid. The Tawheed is a word that you don't even find in the Quran. Show me the word Tawheed in the Quran. Tawheed refers to the oneness of Allah that was established by Muhammad, whose father belonged to a clan of idol worshippers and pagans. And so they were like his, they existed during that period of time they called Jahiliyyah, a period of ignorance. And why was oneness so necessary if there was not a plurality of God? So if they didn't have, why was it necessary to stress that there was only one God unless they were worshiping multiple gods? The answer is because there were other gods, such as Allah, as I mentioned, the female counterpart of Allah in Quran, verse 53, verse 19. And then it says here in that verse, have you seen Lat and Uzza? So for those of you who are Muslim or who are reading this book and you're wondering who Lat and Uzza are, Lat is a short way of saying Alat, which is the female counterpart of Allah. And then Uzza is another one. Alat, Uzza, and Manat. But if you read verses like where it says, Quran chapter 2, we created, or we said this to the angels, bow down to Adam. You probably remember that one. Or they say, we created man. Or they say things like, we delivered you from the people of Pharaoh. We parted the Red Sea and we drowned the Pharaoh's men. That's actually stolen from Exodus chapter 1. That whole story is stolen from Exodus chapter 1. Or they say things like, verily, we have made this easy in thy tongue in order that they may give heed. Or they say things like, it is we who have set out of the zodiacal signs in the heavens and made them fair seeming to all beholders. Or they say things like, do the unbelievers think that they can take my servants as protectors besides me? Verily, we have prepared hell for the unbelievers for their entertainment. But there's a constant use of the phrase we. It says, take not two gods, for worship, for he is just one God. Then fear only me and me alone. And then there's so many other places in the Quran. It talks about, when I read it, and I marked it up, it said here, for we shall inherit the earth. We shall inherit the earth. To us they shall return. Again, when they put this Quran together, they were worshiping multiple gods, a plurality of gods, and they did not clean this up. They just threw it together. It says things like, we shall say, lay hold of him and bind him, burn him in the fire of hell, then fasten him with a chain 70 cubits long, for he did not believe in Allah. We. And there's a lot of threats in the Quran. It says things like, we shall sternly punish them for this, their unbelief. So if this is such a peaceful book, why are there so many admonitions and threats? Here's another verse. It says, as for those that deny the life to come, we make them full debt fair to them. They shall be sternly punished in the hereafter. There's another verse. What does it say here? For him that gives in charity and guards himself against evil and believes in goodness, we shall smooth the path to salvation for him. But for him that neither gives nor takes and disbelieves in goodness, we shall smooth the path of affliction. Can you protect us from Allah's vengeance? We shall never escape. Who is this we? They say the angels, but that's not what the book says. That's what the imams say. We molded man into a most noble image, and in the end, we shall reduce him to the lowest of the low, except the believers who do good works, for there shall be a boundless recompense. We created the hours and made them virgins. We smote them with the scourge. These are just different verses in the Quran. This is found throughout the entire Quran. We sent forth Moses with our signs and with illustrious power to Pharaoh. And when our will was done, not Allah's will, when our will was done, and water welled out from the oven, we said to Noah, he scalded humanity alive. He employs fear and extortion. What's peaceful about that? So I don't see what's peaceful about this religion. I really don't. Now, in terms of how women are treated in Islam, you'll find this very interesting for you. Those of you that don't know, if you like to lord over women, then this is the religion for you. This is a religion of male supremacy. It's basically a male supremacy cult, because this is how women are treated. So if you're a female in Islam, and again, there are variations from culture to culture, you cannot serve as what they call a hudud witness. A hudud deals with the law. They cannot serve as a witness. Women cannot receive the same inheritance amount as a man. She'll get half as much as what a man gets, because she's worth half of a man. A woman cannot divorce a man. A woman cannot have a tete-a-tete. That's just a word that means a meeting. She cannot have a meeting with a man. She may not shake a man's hand. She cannot travel unaccompanied. She cannot perform religious rituals during her menstruation because she's dirty. And that is a similar concept that's echoed in the Old Testament. The Old Testament talks about how women are dirty and they have to be quarantined for X amount of time when they're on their menses, or when they've having a child. Let's see. There's also she cannot retain her children if she remarries following a divorce. She can't do that. She cannot receive the same compensation as a man. She cannot be compensated for divorce. She cannot earn compensation equal to a man. That's very interesting, isn't it?
Yep.
In Islam, like I said, a woman's testimony is equivalent to like half the testimony of a man's. So women are prohibited from giving testimony in those cases. She can't participate in Islamic rites during her menstruation. She can't initiate divorce. She's not entitled to compensation upon being divorced. It's crazy. But men can initiate a divorce without explanation, without formality, without any type of compensation. And if he divorces a woman with children, the woman she remarries, she forfeits basically her children to the husband. And a man may simply divorce a wife by just repeating 3 words. I divorce thee, I divorce thee, I divorce thee. And she's divorced.
Oh, it's crazy.
She's finished. Done. And if you go to sites like Women Against Fundamentalism, Fight Against, these types of women, they're telling the story of Islam. And there's men and women that I told you, people have escaped arranged marriages. They're sometimes hunted down by professional bounty hunters. And when they go back to their families, you can imagine what happens to them. Often with tragic results. Sometimes they're even just killed. They're just killed outright. So that's the fate of women in Islam. What else happens to women in Islam? I know that if a woman is in Islam, it says, let's see if I can pull that verse up. Here's an interesting verse right here. Quran chapter 4, verse 34. It reads as follows. Men are the protectors and maintainers of women, because Allah has given one more strength than the other, and because they support them from their means. Therefore, the righteous women are devoutly obedient and guard in absence what Allah would have them guard. As to those women on whose part ye fear disloyalty and ill conduct, refuse to share their bed and strike them. But if they return to obedience, seek not against them means, for Allah is high, great, above you all. And of course, there's different translations of that same verse. Some of them just say hit her. Some of them say strike. Some of them say strike lightly. And they just modify, just like you have so many different versions of the Bible. You got so many different versions of the Quran, and it's basically the same thing. They're both Abrahamic religions. They both are based on fear. They both have a patriarchal male God. They both have a vindictive God. They both come from a medley of sources. They have so many commonalities. They all have different rites and rituals. They all have blood sacrifices. They all have my God is bigger, better, faster, and stronger than your God type mentality. Now, in the Arab world, I found out that when baby girls are born, boys are basically treated like kings in the Arab world. If a girl is born, depending on the family, it's very common for them to say something like, next time the new mother is told you'll give him a son, or the husband might say something like, my wife is worthless. She's only giving me girls. If someone can ask the question, how many children do you have? And if a person says 4 children, meaning 4 sons, and if he's pushed, he may reluctantly say, and 3 daughters. That's how it is in the Arab world. Husbands, they frequently feel shame, and women feel guilt. And this is when they have a female girl, a baby girl. And the family offers even condolences, like somebody died. The woman may be, divorced. She may become an outcast even if she gives birth to a baby girl.
Wow.
Well, too many girls. And again, this is Arab culture, superimposed. And then some people they may argue, well, this is Arab culture. It has nothing to do with Islam. Well, my argument would be this. If Islam and Arab culture have commingled, or they've gotten married, or they are joined at the hip, if they have married each other, then the greater Islam, this divine doctrine, should obliterate this inferior tradition of man, or this inferior tradition of men. Why hasn't it done that? Why hasn't it had some type of rehabilitative effect on men? Why hasn't it increased their moral foundation? If it's a divine doctrine, You can't just say, oh, well, those people are crazy, or those people, they don't represent Islam, but they are Islamic. I say the same about Christianity. It should have some type of reformative effect on the mind state or the mindset of the people. And if it doesn't, then it's not worth its salt. It doesn't have any power. It has no juice whatsoever. Now, when female infants are buried alive, sometimes they are buried alive. And it's questioned for what crime she was killed. They can actually be. This is what it's actually, the Quran says it. And go to the Quran, chapter 81, verse 8. It says, when the female infant buried alive is questioned for what crime she was killed. Very, very common. This is a part of the culture, and it's embedded in their religious teachings. And a common saying in Islam is a man loves his first son, then his camel, then his wife. That's what it says. It says here, Allah creates what he wills and bestows male or female according to his will. It's one of the most interesting doctrines I've ever seen. I'm surprised that a lot of our people, they don't even know this information. I'm not saying anything that's, innovative or new. I'm not saying anything creative. This information has been around for a long time, but people just don't take the time to do their due diligence, to roll up their sleeves, and to investigate. We have to become scientists like we were before. You know?
Yes.
We're not scientists anymore. We just pretty much go with the flow. What else can I say about Islam? Of course, I did mention that women are forced to sit in the back of the mosque during prayer, right?
And
the answer of the back door, and they have to go to the back of the bus like we used to, and like they're trying to take us back. And they have to sit in the back of the mosque during prayers. And you ask a Muslim, they say usually, oh, it's because of tradition. The true answer is that it's due to male chauvinism, which has been, inbred in Mohammedan male society eons ago. You know, it even says here, "O you who believe, when a call is proclaimed to prayer on Friday, hasten earnestly to the remembrance of Allah." It doesn't say anything about men in front, women in back, but that's what happens, though. That's what happens. But you hear things about men like setting their sisters ablaze after, dousing her with alcohol and, murdering her because she treated a male patient, or an Algerian specifying the length of a stick that a man can use to beat his wife in Algeria. This is in Africa. These Arabs have invaded Africa and turned this place into a religious dictatorship. You know, it deals with, prophets' wives were, he had different wives. Khadijah was a wealthy, she was older than him. And he had another one, Aisha. She was a judge and a warrior. But that's where he got a lot of his doctrine from, his wife, from her cousin, and from other sources. Like I mentioned, he did go into the, let me see that book that was written about that is called The God of Light and Fire. It's written by Panabab Yanun, a.k.a. Dr. Malachi Ziyort. See what he had to say about that. Let's see where it is. Nope, wrong book. And he's written so many books. I mean, there's another book that you guys would want to get if you want to study Islam. That book is called Why I Am Not a Muslim by Ibn Warraq. W-A-R-R-A-Q. Ibn Warraq. Why I Am Not a Muslim. Very informative book. Of course, you can read the Quran itself too, or different Qurans. Just like if you study the Bible, you want to study different Bibles because they all say different things. And of course, if you study the Bible, you want to go back to the more original one than the ones that are out now, because they're making new Bible versions every day. So if you go to the version, let's say the one that your grandmother had versus the new ones that come out today, it would reveal a lot more information. So they're constantly watering down this information in these books, and they're constantly watering down information in the Quran too, and they're constantly changing words around.
Mm-hmm.
But with regard to racism in Islam, that's another thing people have to think about. Here you are joining an organization that is racist to the core, and you want to be a part of something that has nothing, that doesn't even, that denigrates the color black, denigrates blackness. They even say like that stone that they walk around that's inside of that cube-shaped building called the Kaaba. The Kaaba. And actually the word Kaaba comes from two Egyptian words, Ka and Ba, soul and spirit. They say that the black stone that's housed inside of the Kaaba turned black, although it was originally white. And it turned black because due to the many people who kissed it, and it turned black due to their sins, because black is obviously something that's bad, you know. But in reality, the stone is really brown, not black. But they say it's black because it was turned black by the sins of the people, you know. And everybody knows that, well, they should know that the Islamic world is a hotbed of racism. Racism is just thoroughly interwoven into the culture of the Arab world. Like in Mauritania, for example, they documented the savage slavery stories that you can hear about produced in Mauritania. There's a show called The Arab Slave Trade 1996 by Sam Cotton. That's something to check out. And in the Quran, in chapter 3, verse 106, blacks are portrayed as burning as hell's inhabitants. So the inhabitants of hell in the Quranic sense are black people. So depending on the Quran you read, it says rejectors of Allah's faith will turn black, while acceptors will be white. And so people make the mistake of when they read their Bibles or their Qurans, they'll say, well, that's not in my Quran, or that's not in my Bible. Well, you have to read multiple Qurans and multiple Bibles, and you also want to go back to the most original one, which none of them have the original. And that's just another excuse for them to be lazy and not to do any type of due diligence and homework. Mm-hmm. But there is an interesting cartoon they had in the Arab world too, called The Black That Lives Under the Earth. The Black That Lives Under the Earth, or The Black Who Lives Under the Earth. It's basically a degrading cartoon it's a cartoon book that was widely promoted in the Arab world that depicted blacks as jet black, bone-nosed, flesh-eating, savage cannibals, basically.
Damn.
You know?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. That's Islam. That's Islam. So some people may say, well, Islam is a universal religion. Yeah, it's a universal religion insofar as you want to conquer the entire world and subject them to Islam. Because if you don't conform to the Islamic principles, they have the option of either, killing you or turning you into a dhimmi, which is a second-class citizenship status under an apartheid-like regime. You know? So what else can I say? People on this conference, how many people knew about this information? I'm sure some people knew about this. And it's another thing that's really funny. Many Arabs, they despise their co-religionist brothers who accept what they call alien Western values, but they don't look at themselves as traitors to the culture of their ancestors. Like, for example, Iran was once a place where Zoroastrianism was a stronghold, and it's still there today. And so their ancestors, many of them that were killed off by these Islamic warriors that were forcing Islam down their throats from the point of a sword, their people, their ancestors were Zoroasters, or followers of Zoroaster. And in India, the Hindus, they were Hindus. And in Syria, you had people that were Christians, and all of these people were conquered by Islam. And the ones that became Muslim, they became Muslim from the point of a sword. So they're despising their Islamic brothers who accept what they call alien religions, but their ancestors would have the same thing to say about them. You know? And you've heard the other term about caliphs. The caliphs.
Yeah, what is that?
CALIPH. That man is considered to be I guess, the equivalent of the Pope, because, you know, the Pope is considered to be the closest thing to God, the vice regent of God in the Christian, well, in the Catholic faith.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the Caliph is considered to be God's shadow on earth. That's his shadow.
Wow.
So at various points in Islamic history, these shadows of God have failed miserably in executing their duties, like the duties of their office. Like, how can this be if the God's very shadow protects him? Does that mean that God's shadow isn't sufficient to give these errant caliphs guidance? It's ridiculous. It's totally ridiculous. So, what else? This subject is something that could be covered. I mean, this is something you can talk about forever. Like, the Quran has been divided into two different sections. You have what they call the early surahs or chapters, mm-hmm. and then you have the later surahs. Well, there's a difference between the early surahs and the later surahs, because when you hear about the nice, beautiful, flowery verses, you're hearing about the early surahs, or the Meccan verses, they call them, because they went from Mecca to Medina. And then the later surahs, or the later chapters, those were the chapters that reveal Muhammad at his most belligerent and intolerant, where he says really, really wicked things and very hateful things and things about conquering and killing. And, you know, those will be chapters like chapter 2, chapter 4, chapter 5, chapter 8, chapter 9, chapter 22, and chapter 47. Mm-hmm. So there's a world of difference between those two sections of the Quran. So the Quran, as I mentioned, has been divided into two different sections. And then, of course, you have the concept of jihad. There's some people that have the last name jihad. And the jihad, the ultimate goal of jihad is to conquer the entire world and subject it to the one true faith, or the law of Allah. That's what they believe. And they believe, like I mentioned, there's two groups of mankind. You have the Dar al-Islam, or the land of Islam, the Holy Land, the Ummah, they call it, or the Islamic community. And then you have the opposite, which would be the Dar al-Harb, which would be the land of warfare, or the residence of the infidels, which is where we live, according to them, destined to pass into Muslim hands by either concession or by force. They call it Harb. That's what Harb means, force, H-A-R-B. It means force. So all acts of war are permitted in the Dar al-Harb, because it's not a holy land. So they want to purify the land and make it into a holy land. And when they say things like, you know, when you meet unbelievers, strike off their heads, they're talking about chopping people's heads off. And this is the type of sickness and disease that afflicts the minds of our brothers and sisters in Africa. I asked a brother one time, I'm like, what is the difference? What is the benefit of being Islamic well, first of all, I asked him the question. I said, if self-preservation is the first law of nature, then shouldn't you be looking after your own before you look after anybody else? And he goes, yeah. And I said, well, what does Islam teach you about self-preservation, about, you know, amalgamating with your own first and then being a Muslim second? Because I asked him a question. I said, are you Muslim first, or are you black first and Muslim second, or what? He said, I'm Muslim first. I said, that doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So another thing that's interesting is the similarity of the Jewish faith to Muslims. Both practice slavery. They have a history of slavery. Both practice slavery. ISIS was actually carrying the organization they call ISIS, which was created by them, was called wearing the Star of David. You might still be able to find it online. They were called wearing the Star of David because, you know, they engage in a lot of false flag attacks against people, where they pretend like the person that is attacking is someone else because of the way they're dressed, and then it's actually them, so that they could influence public opinion negatively against that party that they're impersonating. So they're caught wearing the Star of David, and also ISIS never attacks Israel, never. Israel. That's what I call it, Israel. Jews are, you know, they're the reason for the, and they also, the similarity of them, they are the reason for the mass immigration into this country. They know that Spanish people don't have that they have a collectivist type of mindset where they will be right for communism. So they would want to eliminate people 65 and older that really hold dear to, say, the Constitution, and that believe in, say, freedom of expression and those other types of constitutional precepts. And of course, Judaism and Islam, they're both Abrahamic religions. They have a Torah-based teachings. And then they both have similar concepts. Like they say, the Quran says non-believers are like beasts, right? Mm-hmm. But in the Judaic faith, they say goyim. Goyim are human cattle or beasts. And that's how they describe humans. And they believe that, Allah discriminates and gives to whom he pleases and withholds from whom he pleases. Isn't that the same thing in Judaism, where they say that he discriminates because he has a chosen group of people?
Wow.
What's the difference?
Hand in hand.
And there's so many other similarities. Like, if you go in the Bible, you heard the story about how it's difficult it is as difficult for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven as it is for a camel to go through the eye of a needle. You've heard that, right?
Yep.
Well, go to the Quran, chapter 7. It talks about a camel passing through the eye of a needle. Again, they stole that. They inserted that because they didn't have any type. When this man was putting this information together, or this doctrine together, he derived it from many different sources. And that's funny, because when many religions are created, that's how they're created. They create them from, they just, gather them from many different sources. So what else do they say? There is a concept. What is the concept? In the Quran, it talks about how your tongues, your hands, and your feet shall bear witness against you. And if you go into the Jewish writings, they say the same thing. Your tongues, your hands, and your feet shall bear witness against you. Because basically, every cell in your body is recording every single thing that you do anyway. Everything is recorded. It's like it's in your cells that are in record mode as we speak. So everything that happens in your body, every single activity, every thought, every action, every misdeed, every word, every smell, every color is all being recorded as we speak. And it's being stored in your cellular record. So I'd like to get some feedback and see what people have thought about some of these revelations.
Oh, you definitely going to get feedback. That comment section, when it goes up as a video, is going to be packed.
Well, I said a mouthful, I know, but like I said, there's so much with this Islamic religion, but I've never heard people like disclose this information, and I just felt that in this era of in this informational age, people have a right to know. And if they're trying to make some decisions, they need to make a decision with all the facts. And now that they have more of the facts, then they cannot be made a fool of or be taken advantage of. You know? There's something else I wanted to tell you about Islam. Very interesting. You will find this very interesting. This is what they think about. This is what they think. This is what they think about bestiality. This is from the Quran, chapter 23, verse 1, or chapter 23. There's basically two verses that support. They indirectly support bestiality as a practice. This is what it says. It says, "Successful indeed are the believers who are humble in their prayers and who keep aloof from what is vain, and who are givers of the poor rate." That's called the charity that we talked about earlier, the zakat. And who are givers of the poor rate, and who guard, let me just reduce this a little bit, and who guard their private parts. Those who guard their private part except before their males or their mates, or those whom their right hands possess. Because remember, I told you they have slaves that they possess. When they say that which your right hand possesses, they're talking about your slave property. So those who guard their private parts except before their mates or those whom their right hands possess. So in other words, it's okay to not guard your private parts before your mates or those that your concubines or those slaves that you have in your possession. For they surely are not blamable. So it's okay to do that, basically, except before those mates or those whom their right hands possess, for they surely are not blamable. So it's not appropriate to do that before your mates if they're, or before those that you don't own as property. And those who are keepers of their trust and their covenant, and those who keep guard on their prayers. These are they who are the heirs, who shall inherit the paradise, they shall abide therein. So just thinking about that verse, the last thing you'll think about is bestiality, right? Because I said it's okay for them to do this, to show their private parts before their mates and to those whom their right hands possess. So remember those terms. Now let me go to the next verse. It says here, this is Quran chapter 70, verse 28. Behold, for their sustainers chastisement none may ever feel secure, and who are mindful of their chastity with any but their spouses. So in other words, you should be have relations only with your spouses. That is, those whom they rightfully possess, which would indicate their property, their concubines. For then, behold, they are free of all blame. So in other words, you can do that and display yourself before your mate or your possessions, your wives or your property, and be blameless. And it says here, whereas such as seek to go beyond the limit are truly transgressors. So if you go beyond that, then you are a transgressor. And who are faithful to their trust and to their pledges, and who stay firm wherever they bear witness, and who guard their prayers from worldly intent. And then it says here, some Muslims use these verses to prove that Islam doesn't permit bestiality because apparently they limit lawful relations to a man's spouses or slave girls. So those are the verses that they basically use to prove that bestiality is not permitted. But when you talk about the phrase, those whom your right hands possess, when you think about that phrase is referring to not only wives or female slaves, it's also talking about those things that you control, which could be a figurative expression to mean anything that's under your control, not just your wives, not just your slaves, anything you can control. Anything you can control could be, property that you possess, like animals, property. Even this, there's a place in the Quran that lists persons and things that a man's possess, like in Quran chapter 3. It says here, the love of desires of women and sons and hoarded treasures of gold and silver and well-bred horses and cattle and tilth is made to seem fair to men. This is the provision of the life of this world, and Allah is He with whom is the good goal of life. And then there's another verse that says, let's see. Basically, when they use that term, those whom your right hands possess, is talking about any type of property, not just your women, which it's funny that they refer to them as property, and also your slaves. Then it says here, let's see. If a woman inserts herself, referring to her vagina, into an animal's penis, she must wash. And then it says here, where is it? If he had sexual intercourse with an animal, this will not make his Hajj void. So his pilgrimage to Mecca will not be in vain if he's had sexual intercourse with an animal.
That means that was happening back then for them to write that down. That's crazy.
This is crazy. All of this is in the Quran. This is really, really something. What else does it have to say? There's just so much. I think they got a good grasp of Islam. I'd like to get some comments.
Okay.
A couple other things I can tell you. some of the violence though in Islam. This is what it says in Quran chapter 5 verse 33. It says, dismember, which means cut up, dismember and kill those who don't believe it, who don't believe. So dismember or kill those who don't believe. And some people literally believe this. Kill them, of course, that means execute or crucify them. Dismember, execute, or crucify, and kill those who don't believe. At Quran chapter 60, verse 1, don't be friendly with non-Muslims. Quran chapter 9, verse 5, seize them, fight them, slay them, lie in wait for them, beleaguer them. But if they repent and do regular prayers, then it's okay. That's what it says, basically. I'm just paraphrasing it. They brag that Islam was spread by the sword, you know. There's a book in the Quran called the Spoils. This is a very interesting chapter in the Quran, the Spoils. The first thing you need to do is read that chapter, then come away and ask yourself, what does this chapter have to do with spiritual uplift? What does this chapter have to do with me advancing spiritually? What does this have to do with me making me a better person? When you read that chapter, the chapter is about stealing and robbing and killing and taking other people's property, but that's in the Quran. So I know the answer, but the reason, why would they put something in the Quran like that? Why would they, if this is such a book of peace? The book is about the spoils of war. And the reason why they put that in the Quran is because back during those days, this prophet was, and you have to ask yourself, how was he earning a living? What was he doing for money? The way that he was earning money was through, or earning these spoils was through, well, the thing that attracted his followers to him was because they were not a religious people. They were not a spiritual people. They were interested in war booty. They were interested in land, ladies, and loot. That's what he did to attract them to Islam. And that's why they put that chapter in there called the chapter of the spoils. That's what it's all about. Then there's another chapter that says, of course, fight in Allah's cause. Another one says, chapter Quran 2, verse 190, fight in the cause of Allah, those who fight you. Slay them when you catch them. This is what it says. It says, Quran chapter 2, verse 193, fight till there is no more. Quran chapter 2, verse 216, fighting is prescribed upon you. You're supposed to fight. That's what you're supposed to do. If you're in Islamic faith, you're supposed to fight. There's no two ways about it. And if you go to the chapter 4, verse 25, it shows you that slavery is condoned in Islam. It says basically you can marry free women, free believing women. If you don't have the financial wherewithal to marry, I'm just paraphrasing it. If you don't have the financial means or the financial wherewithal to marry the free ones, marry believers that you possess with your right hand. That's what it says. And one thing that's really funny, the Quran says marry believing women, right? Well, in Quran chapter 4, verse 25. Marry free women, believing women, or believing women that you possess or own. They should be chaste, virtuous women. Contradiction. Why did Muhammad marry the Copt? Devout Christian, that was his 8th wife. Why did Muhammad marry Khadijah, a strict Christian, a woman who married twice and was non-virtuous and therefore unchaste? She also she couldn't have been virtuous since they were in a state of ignorance, in a state of jahiliyyah, as they called it in Arabic. She was also an unbeliever. So how can this Quran say this for the believers, but have a different rule for Muhammad? Completely different. But I mentioned that chapter, the chapter of the spoils. They call it chapter 8, I think. Yeah, chapter 8. They call it Al and Fall. You might see it listed as the spoils, or you might see it listed as AL, next word ANFAAL, Al and Fall, or the spoils. And they justified Muhammad's practice of taking or stealing things from conquered tribes, and that's what they did. Because they were not and clearly from this book you can see that this is not spirituality. And then they said later in the Quran, the spoils are the spoils of Allah. They were at the disposal of Allah and the Messenger. So fear Allah and that's the reason why he gained so many adherents and followers, because he was a conqueror and a killer, a murderer. And they ruled, they spread Islam by the sword, period. So that's what I wanted to tell you guys tonight about Islam. That's what I wanted to say about it. There's a lot more to say about it, but for now, that's pretty much what I wanted to say. And I wanted to really get that out to people that are, again, people that may be on the fence, people that may be considering a new religion, but don't have all the facts. And also to indicate that you have to do your research before you get involved in anything, because you don't know, you don't really know what you're getting involved in. I mean, I've known women that were from Africa, and it turns out that they're Muslims, and then they're going to this Hajj. And I knew one that she was going to go to Hajj, and she didn't know that they had black slaves in the Muslim world. I said, you can end up not even coming back from the Muslim world and end up being a slave. I'm like, how do you feel about that? And this is your religion. How do you feel about that? It's just total silence. She didn't even know that. Didn't even know.
It's amazing how many people are ignorant to certain facts.
Man, it's really, really, really amazing. It's hurtful, but we do it to ourselves a lot of times. I mean, the thing is, we don't have a developed center of gravity, cultural sense of gravity, and so we gravitate to other people's center of gravity, which is really no good for us, no good whatsoever. So that's what we do, and I hope that this information that I relate tonight could, in some small way, ameliorate or resolve that for some people. I know it won't resolve it for everybody, but they have to do their own homework, their own due diligence, their own homework, but you will definitely clearly see when you do this research that you'll definitely see how this was just lifted from the Judaic doctrine. You study the Gnostic texts, you'll see how their teachings were lifted from the Gnostic texts, and you'll see how it was lifted from Coptic Christianity, Ethiopian Coptic Christianity. It also came from the Nazarite Christianity too, and also from Zoroastrianism, Babylonianism, and also the hand of the Catholic Church. There's many actors involved in constructing this product called Islam, and that's never talked about. And I did mention the Zina crimes. I know Pakistan, for example, has a good, very strict about these Zina crimes. They have what they call the Zina ordinances in Pakistan, and very, very male chauvinistic cultures. People, we got to understand, if we don't exalt our women and put our women back on her square, then we're not going nowhere. We're not going nowhere. And a lot of people, when they found out what Dr. Malachi C. York was doing, when he pivoted from Islam, because his mission was not to teach Islam. His mission was to give us the facts. They couldn't handle that, so they wanted to go back to Islam. They wanted to go back to their multiple wives when they couldn't even afford their multiple wives. Because if you're going to have multiple women, you should be a wealthy man, and not just do that to your family if you really want them to prosper and to grow. I mean, that's me personally. I wouldn't have multiple women unless I was a wealthy man.
Right. Have them all impoverished and whatnot. I know guys like that. I did a show many, many years ago about a guy who claimed to be into that, and he had women, and it ended up where he was just a pimp who wanted to stay home and have his wives go out and work. And he lived right here in Central Florida.
Really?
Mm-hmm. I'll tell you, down through the years, I've spoken to some very interesting people who might not have been too nice, but it's just amazing how even in that situation, the women were cool with it for some reason, and he was recruiting more. And they were trying to use the show to recruit more. And I'm like, listen, man, he started off a certain way, and he lived in my neighborhood. That's the funny thing.
Wow, that's very interesting. I know a brother that does that. I don't know what his situation is, but like I said, me personally, I wouldn't do it unless, because it's a disservice to the black family. It's a disservice to any children that are produced. it's a disservice to the women because, you know, you have to be the provider. So how are you going to provide for all these women if you don't even have the means to do it? But it's just a sex thing for you, you know? I'm not against polygamy though. Polygamy is actually needed for a lot of our people in the state that we're in right now. A lot of women don't have no man. A lot of women have children, but they don't have any type of family support. And their man, quote unquote, their man would be the quote unquote government, which we know should be the last entity that we should even be having any type of connection with or any type of relationship with at all. You know? So you guys have heard my rant for tonight. Let me see. I really enjoyed the lady that came on earlier. Like I said, I didn't hear her the entire broadcast, but she was pretty powerful and very inspiring.
Yes, you know that connection just dropped out of the sky. It was amazing.
Oh, I like the visual, man. That you created. Yeah, I just looked at it. Wow.
I told you I got you. But you know when I did that,
wow.
I could have put many small images that wouldn't have grabbed the eye. So
that's great.
So to confirm that it was about Islam, I had the crescent, the star, you know, and the little, you know, building there. But I felt that was not all we were going to talk about, but I knew you were going to go there on how, you know, women are oppressed. And I saw the bars in front of the eyes. That alone, it was a single image. I didn't even think I was going to come up with something like that. But when I got all the components together, I put them together and it's like, okay, that makes a heck of a statement that many women would identify with. You know what I mean?
That was genius right there. That's just like perfect. I couldn't have had a more perfect picture.
And as a thumbnail, you know, most people don't know that as a thumbnail or any ad, and I've said this before in other shows, a human being, a human will identify with a face. You know, especially when you're competing against so much, that says a whole lot more than you read in the words. The words just guide you. You know. Wow. You see, limited real estate on a YouTube page, you better have something that leaps out color wise, image wise, and you have a split second to make that person say, "Hey, let me click on this and see." And I never do clickbait in the title or in an image. What you see is what you get. You know what I mean?
Yes. That's why I like to try to stick to a theme. I mean, I went off a little bit about the present situation, but
no, it's okay. It's okay.
The meat of what I wanted to say dealt with that specific topic because we really need to, because of the mind state that our people are in, and because we have been so brain poisoned, we have to do some serious brainwashing and really purge this madness from their brains. Because when I started learning about the truth about these religions, I actually had what happened to me was and different effects for different people. But what happened to me when I started learning the truth, all of those calcified lies that were in my brain started to disintegrate, and I started getting headaches. And that let me know that the spell was being broken and that I was being reborn mentally. And that's what's going to have to happen to a lot of people. They're going to experience the same thing. And some people may have, they'll have their own individual experience. Some people may even faint, but different people are going to have different experiences. But I know people are going to have different experiences. They may have the headaches. That's what I experienced. And I was never the same from that point. But that we call that, we refer to that as having a DNA explosion. And that's exactly what happens because the neurons in your brain is changing. And you're no longer just a believer. You have to be a knower at that point, a scientist. So that's what happened with me. And I haven't been the same since.
That's a good thing. That's a gift to the world.
Yep. Well, I hope they enjoyed it. And man, that image is so classic. Wow. That's what pulled me in with Nefertiti. When I seen that, I'm like, "Ooh, who is that? That's Nefertiti." And then I saw the other image that was just kind of like it's like a perfect blend of artistry and color, and imagery, and it's just, I don't know, it's perfect.
Wow. Well, I thank you, man. I always try to put some kind of thought into it. Like okay, when we do recorded shows, I have the whole show to get the feel, but I know your style. And once I talk to somebody like, our sister Nefertiti, we just met and we spoke briefly, and I knew kind of what to put up. But she sent me a photo. She sent me a photo of herself. But I had already started, and I didn't know that she texted me a photo to use, and it would have been better. But for the next show that she's on, I'm definitely going to use it in a creative way, depending on when she wanted to start. Because she was saying, well, I'm going to be all over the place. How do you do a banner to cover that? I said, I do a banner where we start. If we're talking about apples in the beginning, especially when it's a non-directional show, if we're speaking about apples in the beginning, we're going to have apples up there. Maybe I'll add some other fruit. If we speak about birds, we're going to start there, but we might go and talk about cows. So it makes sense to me in the mind that, okay, we're starting out talking this way. Because how many times do you have, especially with the open conversation, like tonight I know that you wanted to speak about Islam, but when you have an open conversation, how do you encompass what you don't even know is going to happen yet when you want to put a banner up for that? So I just asked her, where you want to start? And she kind of told me about, in the title, and since she's a writer, it was easier that way. So you got to come up with something that matches the content, and pulls you in that way. Like I said, it's just, I've been doing this for a long time, and just artwork for a long time. So now I'm getting into graphics, and look, I threw that together really quick. Because remember when I asked you? Remember? And boom, boom. Yeah, I asked you, and I said, listen, I look for different components online, put it together. I actually had to cut out that, the crescent. I liked the way it looked. I had to shed the light on it a different way. I had to sharpen her up a little bit. I had to touch up these things. And I said, most of the colors are warm colors on there. So when we put your name in a cool color to kind of blend with her. It's instinctive, and I'll be making more banners and different things. And I want to make definitive categories on my YouTube page, since instead of like I have Black perspectives. And so now, what is that? Now we have, Sister Segment 7, Carrie Lux, Mr. Political, Zamal Tamaray. So I'm going to put the people, in the different categories so they can reference you. And then cool. And then maybe we have a general kind of thing, and I don't want to have too many different categories, but if I have a Zamal Tamaray playlist, right, they can click on this one link that would do all of your stuff. Like I have Brother Kwaku, a playlist of all of his. Cool. So I'm going to gather up all of everybody's particular work and put it in one category so you can share it in one bang. Like, okay, see this one link? I don't have to send. Here's one link. And as we do shows, it updates automatically. So if a person's coming to the channel and looking just for you, which is fine, they'll say, okay, I don't see anything new. Or they can go to their playlist and do so. So I'm just.
Oh, you can do that?
Oh, yeah. I'm going to set it up. It's going to take methodically. I have, in the last week and a half, I think we did almost 40 videos. So I got to transfer that over to the website. So when I turn my head, it's like, it goes up. I mean, I have one to edit tonight, which I'm probably going to pass and just do it in the morning and put it up for me. We got good work tomorrow. We have Brother Leo, and Mr. Mysterious X, the brothers who spoke about Jesus. They're going to come on again tomorrow night. We have Mad Guns coming on Thursday night. He's going to speak on some. Always brings research and good vibes. A couple of shows I forgot. I'm going to go to the park and do some things. Somewhere in there, Brother Quako's going to pop up. You know what I mean? So, and there's going to be a random conversation that pops out of nowhere. Okay, and I will say it now. The next conversation that I put up in the morning is a young lady from Miami, I think Homestead. She's a teacher. She has a garden. She's into the whole health thing. The way she speaks, like I said, I knew that it's like the divine energy is dropping great people that I can share. It's like in my life, people say, well, it's like I've always collected people. I'll say it that way. I've always met charismatic or intriguing people all my life. And this is a wonderful way to share them. I don't own them, but as a conduit, it's like, oh, wow, I'll meet somebody here at the supermarket. I'll meet somebody like there's a young lady in the public supermarket who bags up the stuff. And she looked me in my eye directly, and Mrs. SCURV was there, and she started speaking on a spiritual level because of the necklaces I had. And we jumped right into something so deep that most people wouldn't understand. And we saw her again today, and we kept I saw her eyes, because she had the mask on, because they have to wear the mask, right? But I saw her eyes again. We locked eyes. It was no romantic thing. It was just a spiritual thing. And she says, "Oh, I know you're doing well. I know you're above this." I said, "I'm having the best time of my life. I'm meditating. I'm creating." If she keeps up, she's going to end up on the show or on the video.
That'll be nice. She has a story too.
Yeah, exactly. So I really enjoy that. And we're going to be doing the regular Dr. Kang shows. I spoke with him at length today, and it really, he has a lot of plans and stuff like that. So I'm just happy to be in this position and to fulfill my role, my mission, you know, and I enjoy it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I really do. It's I wholeheartedly enjoy it. I think one of the greatest things we can do as a people is to utilize our creativity. A lot of us don't do that.
Exactly. It's
I think your life is wasted in many respects if you don't utilize the creativity, your creative gifts and talents, and everybody has them in some form of creativity. You know, it's very important to do that.
And it's different, and the energy that drives the creativity is different. So we can have the same category. We can be in the same lane, but we do it a different way, and it comes off differently, and it's made for different people. You know, I don't eat chicken anymore, but if I gave you a chicken and I had a chicken and we had to both, you know, cook it a certain way, it's the same chicken, but it's going to come up with it because we flavor it different. And that's what makes the world wonderful. And the energies, you know, I'm pulling people now to me. As much as I stay inside, not because I'm quarantined, but I do a lot of work on the computer. I wake up, you know, my day is very unique. You know, I look at the different stories that are out there. I take the different calls from different people who want to do shows or do certain things or drop a tip on me or whatever. And I just go with the flow. And people say, well, how do you do so much content? I said, some days I don't know what I'm going to do, but I say, you know what? I'm going to do 5 things a day, 4 things a day, 3 things a day. I'm going to, you know what? I'll tell Mrs. SCURV, I'll be back. She says, where you going? I said, I'm going to go take my camera out, and I know I'm going to come back with something. I'm going to go fishing. I'm going to go here. I'm going to go way over to, I'm going to go by Mr. Political and do some videos. You know what I mean? He dropped some stuff on me earlier. I'm going to drop that like 5 minutes worth. It comes to you. It's like when you go fishing. Do you know exactly how many fish you're going to get? But you go because you know you're going to get it. Some days are better than others. You know what I mean? So it's every day is a joy because energies are going to come at me.
Yeah, you remind me of, I heard this quote before and it reminded me of you and it reminded me of me. And the quote dealt with mercenaries. And you probably heard the quote before, but the quote says, mercenaries will be draftees, but the volunteers will crush them both. Because a mercenary is someone that fights for money, right?
Yeah.
A draftee is somebody that's in the fight. Let's say a person drafted into the military, but they're fighting under coercion, basically, because the government is forcing them to fight. But a volunteer is someone who's passionate and they do it for free, for the love of it. So I'm doing this for free because I like it and I love it, and you're doing it for free because you love it. So we're volunteers. We're not mercenaries. We're not paid to do this. We're not draftees. We're not doing it under duress, but we're doing it because we love what we're doing.
And I will acknowledge that, you know, our listeners here will donate. You know, they will do that. So I'm not going to say, well, I don't receive. I would be lying. But what I'm saying is that, you know,
yeah, but you're not doing it for money.
No. I just started receiving a lot within the last 2 years or so, last year and a half. But other than that, you know, I've been out here since 2001 before YouTube came around, and we're talking every day. You go to LANCESCURV.com, the proof is in the pudding. Even if you stay on YouTube, go and see how far back the videos went and how many they are, and understand that that's a love of mine. And just to answer Tracy 777, yes, I'm gonna call Sister Keisha first thing as soon as I wake up and see if we can get her on and speaking about the riots and stuff, because I would love to hear her free flow, as well as Miko. If I can get them both on, that would be awesome, right?
Yeah, that would be interesting. Yeah, well, I was a little off tonight because my throat was not all that great.
Well, you sound well, brother. You got the great speaking voice, man.
Well, I just hope that this information can touch someone who's maybe confused. And the information just had to come out, man. It's very necessary for people to know. There's no reason why people should live in a sea of ignorance when we live in an ocean of information.
There you go.
And sometimes you have to sift through that information, and it could be to wade through that information. That could take a lifetime for some people even to get to this, because they have other interests and maybe they won't even get to this. You know, so this is kind of like a one-stop shop, and I like that about this. Now, just curious before I go,
Sure.
people that are on here, where are they from? What countries?
Okay, we did a roll call earlier, but I had asked for the roll call, and then I had something else on the other computer doing, and I kept peeking back and forth. So I have to scroll up and see, or if you go back, you will see it, because it's still 398 people here. We had almost 440 something at one point. Maybe it went higher than that. And that's on one platform, right? There's other platforms you're on right now. You were on Facebook, on 3 different Facebook pages, so I'd have to go back and see that. So, you know, it's and then those who see it afterward, you know, this is going to go on like, you know, those space probes that take photos of Mars, but it keeps on flying. Now it's past Pluto, you know what I mean? And it's still sending back photos. So, you know, the amazing thing, you know, I have an app on my phone that helps me to run the channel when I'm not home. It's, you know, any comment. It could be a comment on a video 8 years old. I'm going to see it as new. So we have a lot of people who try to slip in comments like, he's not going to see this one because this video is 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. Bing, I see it. And I answer them back like, how'd you know? and the analytics and the counts and different things, so I can stay on top of it. So it seems like I'm always online. Like, I sent you a message 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, and you answered it. Now, sometimes I'm sleeping. I do sleep, you know. But
man, I don't know how you do. I think you're a robot. Lance is a robot. Lance is a wind-up automaton.
Yeah, when I go to the airport to travel, I set off the alarm all the time. They're like, wait a second, you got any metal on you? I'm like, no, I am metal. No, I'm just joking.
Well, I appreciate everybody. I appreciate the comments. I see Al-Qadeye, I can't pronounce his name. Al-Qadeye, Awkideye. Plant. Brother Zamal is a true soul food, always refreshing. Much respect. Much respect to you, brother.
That's right. That's the truth. That's the truth.
Very interesting. I'm glad you guys listened to me. Thank you for listening.
It's growing. Your name has weight because they know exactly what they're going to get. You know, and it's a good type of association, because, you know, even little kids, when they're in the car on the highway with their parents and they see the golden arches, you know, they associate McDonald's with that, and they say, "Oh, mommy, I want McDonald's. I'm hungry." So, you know, this is a better type of training, because when we see Zamal Tamare, we know we're going to get quality. We know we're going to be informed. We know we're going to hear the silky, smooth, velvety voice of Zamal, and they appreciate that, you know, and not just the voice, but the intellect behind it. You know what I mean? So,
well, I appreciate all you guys, and it's the quality that's important to me to deliver. You know, either I deliver quality or I deliver nothing at all. So, you know, and this is a part of my legacy. This is part of my my living legacy.
And it's overlapping because it works fine for me. You know, like I say, I'm the plate. You know, you're the meal, I'm the plate. I'm happy to be the plate. Everybody's role they should be happy in. It is only then when they'll be elevated. If you're happy where you are, you know, you do get elevated, but you have to conquer that level and be happy at that level. And then you call for the universe to bring you up higher. So many people are where they are. That means they may not even like it. Now, with this, I love it. But they may not even like it. But they have to endure that because they're learning a different aspect of life that they can carry on to the next level. So there are jobs that we've had, and I'll end it after because I know you want to end it, but there are jobs that we've had in our life, and at the time that we were there, we said, "Oh man, I can't stand this job. I can't stand going here." But you might have had to learn one aspect of the job or one aspect of yourself on the inside. And then you take with that to the next experience until you're rewarded if you are growing. If you're not growing and learning and just jumping from job to job, and I'm just saying that as an example, like job to job, it could be relationship. If you don't learn what you're supposed to learn in that relationship, maybe it will last forever, which means in this lifetime and maybe beyond. We don't know. But you learn from that and you ascend within it. And if you do break up, you'll take something valuable with you. And so
Yes.
this is a journey.
Yes.
We always gather. We may not be able to take the material with us, but there's something as far as the wisdom. I do believe we can take that wisdom, whether we can explain it or not on the next level how we got it, but we are modified when we do take that to make our transition smoother.
Yes. Well, I think if anybody takes anything away from what I talked about tonight, I think the most important thing would be the commonalities between the three Abrahamic religions. That's the most important thing. And if I talk about it again or in some other point, I'll probably rehash those because people need to know those commonalities and those similarities.
That's right. That's right. That's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
Thank you, brother, for your time.
Well, thank you, brothers.
You know,
thank you, sisters and brothers. Thank you. I see Cheryl Williams. She said, we appreciate you, man. I appreciate you, Cheryl. I know somebody named Cheryl Williams. Appreciate everybody. You guys have a great night.
Yes.
And I will talk to you soon, but I'll finish do the second part of the legal tricks and corporate fiction.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm waiting for that, man. Yeah. Any day. Tomorrow, the next day, when you do the call, you know what I mean? Hey, I'm ready, you know? Until then, I'll be holding it down like Alfred the Butler.
I know you will be. You're gonna make me look like a slouch when I look at all this production you got. Look up 2 days later, you got like 50 videos.
It's gonna happen like that one day. Trust me.
Yes.
That's a goal.
Yes.
All right, brother. Thank you so much.
All right,
Thank you so much.
You guys have a good night.
You too.
Thank you.
You too.
All right.
All right. Peace.
Good night.
Wow. Amazing night. Wow. Sister Nefertiti earlier, Brother Zamal Tamaray, wonderful night. Whoo! I think I will be sleeping in a little while. I do sleep sometime, but you never know. I might come back in 2 hours with another show if I get the right phone call. But, that being said, we were going to do a late night, but it worked out this way. Sister Nefertiti talked, but we loved it. And Zamal came in a little later than what we thought. So I guess pretty much that'll wrap it. But I'm going to come with some stuff tomorrow. I have little runs to make tomorrow, but we'll have 3 or 4 things up tomorrow. And they'll be engaging shows. And we'll have something where we have the call-ins come in so we can have everybody else call in and express themselves. So this was very satisfying for me. And I'm just going to wrap it down. And, like I said, keep things going. I'm not going to push so many links on you right now since the shows are going to go off. But you know where the links are. You can just go down in the bottom and everything is there in the description area. But if you do subscribe to the channel, make sure to hit the bell notification, and it's going to say always, custom, or none. You got to hit always if you want to get these notifications because we're going to be throwing them out frequently, and I want to increase the amount of content and keep it on the same quality. I've been meaning to go down and talk to some of the protesters, but they're making it hard to do so, which I'm not a protester per se, but I want to speak to some of them. You have to stand 6 feet apart. You got to do this. You got to do that. And my face is known by law enforcement, so I know they would try to do something or mess around with me, which I'm not scared of them because I know all the tricks because I've been trained in their same academies down here in Central Florida. So they're not going to come at me with anything, and I think they know that. But I do want to document some real life stuff. I mean, it's nothing different than what you see on the news, but it's from my perspective and something that you won't see on the news on a very individual level. I want to get to people who really want to talk and not be censored because we're not going to censor anybody here. We're never going to do that. So that's just what we do. So again, if there's anybody out there who's interested and they have something to say, you could always reach out to me, and that's how we do it. And it's very enjoyable. And tomorrow we're going to meet more people. Look, tomorrow I'm going to meet somebody that I didn't know now that we're going to do a show with that you're going to have a chance to say, wow, that was a great show. And that was a great person. But they're out there and our lives are on a righteous collision course. And we have to understand and keep the positive in our mind that our lives are on a righteous collision course. We have to think that when you put that out there, that tomorrow might be that day. If you're single and you desire a mate, that tomorrow, later on today, might be that day. So don't have a frown on your face. That might be the very one you're meeting. It might be the very one that you might get fired off of a job, which will open the door for a new job or open the door for you to look inside yourself and to discover a way to sustain yourself with a talent that you love. Every day is wonderment. Yes, we have bad news and we lose people and they ascend and and people get in car accidents and different things happen. You find out you have to take care of your health a little better. But the bottom line, as long as you keep your mind up that way, you attract that stuff to you. And within the last year, I can't say I can't believe it, but it's amazing how my life has turned around. Even after the mishap of having malaria last year when I came back from Ghana, that was a turning point for me in a positive way when I look back at it, because it really made me dig deep to say, you know what, this thing called life, whatever it is, I'm going after it. I don't have no fear in anything. Not that I did before, but I'm more proactive and I'm more aggressive toward life. And it's a grit that you just never know. And I got good news, you know, of certain things that are going to be coming up very soon, and certain levels that I will be going on, and certain experiences that I'll be having. And I'm just going to come out swinging because I know how precious life is. Anyway, you all have a wonderful night. And I will get up and do a little more monologuing tomorrow, maybe live when I wake up or whatever, just like I'm doing now. Just free flowing, non-directional, but finding something to talk about to lift somebody up. That's what I'm all about. So I'm going to rest my body. My mind never stops. And if you dream hard enough, I might meet you in the dreams and we'll have another talk show there. But until then, enjoy yourself and know that I love you all and thank you all for being here. And just share the videos, you know, like them, subscribe, whichever you want to do. I appreciate it all because without you, I wouldn't have this. I don't forget my role and I don't forget the people who love me. Thank you, Dream Star, once again. And almost missed that. It would have been terrible. Sometimes I walk away from the screen and I may have 1 or 2 or 3 computers in front of me doing, you know, multitasking. That's so I can get more content out. And if I ever miss anybody to type in or even say how much I appreciate every bit, because it enables me to do more. You know what I mean? And if you can't, it's okay. Just be here. You know, we're all vibing together. And if you get something out of this precious, you know, that's what makes me happy, the bottom line. But I won't forget Tracy777. I'm going to call Keisha in the morning. I'm going to reach out to Sister Biko. Let's see if we can get a verbal powerhouse swirl of passion from our sisters who are very expressive and sometimes spicy, which is okay. That would be joy to the ears. I would love to hear their take on what's going on in the world today. But anyway, let's get down with our song and enjoy them. And I'll see you all, not tomorrow, because today is tomorrow. I'll see you later on. Peace and love.
Yeah. saying?
Everybody's in fear, though.
That's what I'm saying. So it's strictly a place of fear that we're operating from. And the fact is that we're not going to get out of that place. And even sometimes when I speak, and some people will look at me and say, man, you got to be careful of what you say. And I tell people, please do not tell me to be careful in what I have to say. I am not afraid to speak. I am not afraid because, look, I am here to do work. The fact is that when I go to my job, I don't just stand here and look at my job and hoping that it get done in some other way. So the job that I'm here to do, I am doing. I don't want anybody to sit and say, oh man, I'm worried about this. Don't worry about me. I don't want people to go around and worry when is white supremacy going to get him. These are the things that they want you to think. These are the places that they want to put you in.
Paralyzes.
See what I'm saying is, that's why we don't do nothing. We see our sisters being beaten down in the street as a strong black man, and we stand here and we look, and all we can do is take up our phone and videotape it. And what happened after that? You see what I'm saying? We see these things, and yet we are paralyzed by them. But the fact is that here's where the danger comes in. The danger comes in because I will look at you, okay? I'll give you a scenario. Here's a white guy over here. He's got a lot of food, even food that he's just wasting. And you have a gun, but you ain't going over there to rob him. But here is it that me or you who live right next to him, who hardly can find enough to eat and feed the family, that's who he's coming to kill. So what does that say to you now? You see, this is so much self-hate. It is so much self-hate that is within you or me that is going to destroy the other person who look like you or me. And the food, all the food is over there. But you won't cross that line to go and get the food that you need. You're going to cross the line to take away what this other person hardly even have. Because you hate yourself so much that you figure if you destroy yourself, then it's good for I don't have to worry about this God that's living over there, because the God ain't going to give me no food. And if you don't volunteer to give me no food, I'm not going to go over there to take it. That's what I'm saying. So that's the place that we live. That's the place that we live. And so we have to stop feeding into this narrative where we are living in such fear that when a brother starts to speak truth to power, we're ready to say, oh man, hush, hush, hush. I don't want the prisoner to come in and get you next or to get me. So be quiet, see, just don't say anything. Be careful what you say. And that's where we live. That's a very dangerous place to live. It is. But the fact is that we can't see that because we're so caught up. We're so caught up and we're hoping. We are hoping that we just wake up one day and everything magically change. And that is the thing where all of our people, a great deal of our people, is waiting for this magical person to come out of the sky and fix everything for them. That's what I'm saying. It is no magical person that is going to fix it for you. When you have a problem in your house, you must be the one to fix it. You see, what I'm saying is I'm dealing from a place of logic. I'm not dealing from a place of imagination. Because a lot of us, we're dealing from a place of imagination. And that's where the problem comes in.
Why are we called Negroes? Why are we deaf, dumb, and blind? Why is everybody making progress, yet we seem to be lagging so far behind? Why are we mistreated Why are we in this condition? Stripped of our name, our language, our culture, our God, and our religion. Here in America, all of our religious training has been gotten by the preacher. He has told us of a heaven way up in the sky that we can't enjoy now, but rather after we die. But all of the years that we're living, for us there's nothing but hell, pain, torture, and misgiving. Yet the Bible speaks of a heaven filled with material luxury, which the white man and the preacher has right here, so we see. So my friend, take it for what it's worth. Your heaven and your hell is right here on this earth. So let's check back into history, which rewards all research and tells us plainly that before the white man gained entry to the East, he was living in the caves of Europe, a ravenous beast, eating juniper roots and eating flesh raw, till God sent Moses to civilize him and teach him the law. Then following Marco Polo, an explorer, he gained entry into Asia and Africa. From China, he took silk and gunpowder. From India, he took jute, manganese, and rubber. He raped Africa of her diamonds and her gold. From the Mideast, he took barrels of oil untold, raping, robbing, and murdering everything in his path. The whole black world has tasted of the white man's wrath. So, my friend, it's not hard to tell. A white man's heaven is a black man's hell. America, we were living in the East. By the Nile River, we were living in luxury, enjoying freedom, justice, and equality. We wore silken robes and slippers of gold. We were the wealthiest and the wisest people, I'm told. Now we are the poorest of the poor. Nobody wants us at their door. So, my friend, it's easy to tell. White man heaven is black man hell. When the white man came to America, he told the Indian, I am your white brother. He said, red man, I'll treat you the best. Yet and still he pushed the Indian further west with his white woman and fire water. Tricks and lies, he stole America. The original owner of this nation is cooped up on a reservation. So, my friend, it's easy to tell. White man heaven, black man hell. He needed someone to work the land. His back was too weak. He needed you, black man, so he commissioned Sir John Hawkins to commit the world's most grievous sin, to take a man who's born to be free and bring him down to slavery, to sell a man as merchandise, on his body put a price. Oh, my friend, it's easy to tell. White man heaven is a black man hell.
I'm going to do it again just for you, Brother Herman Rohn, just for you, one more time. Since you love it so much.
Why are we called Negroes? Why are we deaf, dumb, and blind?
I got you, brother.
Why is everybody making progress, yet we seem to be lagging so far behind? Why are we mistreated? Why are we in this condition, stripped of our name, our language, our culture, our God, and our religion? Here in America, all of our religious training has been gotten by the preacher. He has told us of a heaven way up in the sky that we can't enjoy now, but rather after we die. But all of the years that we're living, for us there's nothing but hell, pain, torture, and misgiving. Yet the Bible speaks of a heaven filled with material luxury, which the white man and the preacher has right here, so we see. So my friend, take it for what it's worth. Your heaven and your hell is right here on this earth. So let's check back into history, which rewards all research and tells us plainly that before the white man gained entry to the east, he was living in the caves of Europe, a ravenous beast, eating juniper roots and eating flesh raw, till God sent Moses to civilize him and teach him the law. Then following Marco Polo, an explorer, he gained entry into Asia and Africa. From China, he took silk and gunpowder. From India, he took jute, manganese, and rubber. He raped Africa of her diamonds and her gold. From the Mideast, he took barrels of oil untold, raping, robbing, and murdering everything in his path. The whole black world has tasted of the white man's wrath. So, my friend, it's not hard to tell. A white man's heaven is a black man's hell. America, we were living in the east. By the Nile River, we were living in luxury, enjoying freedom, justice, and equality. We wore silken robes and slippers of gold. We were the wealthiest and the wisest people, I'm told. Now we are the poorest of the poor. Nobody wants us at their door. So, my friend, it's easy to tell. White man heaven is black man hell. When the white man came to America, he told the Indian, I am your white brother. He said, red man, I'll treat you the best. Yet and still he pushed the Indian further west with his white woman and fire water. Tricks and lies, he stole America. The original owner of this nation is cooped up on a reservation. So, my friend, it's easy to tell. White man heaven, black man hell. He needed someone to work the land. His back was too weak. He needed you, black man, so he commissioned Sir John Hawkins to commit the worst, most grievous sin, to take a man who's born to be free and bring him down to slavery, to sell a man as merchandise, on his body put a price. Oh, my friend, it's easy to tell, white man heaven is a black man hell.
I lost my love.